Sat Kartar, Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh, Namaskar, Assalamu Alaikum. This is Bhai Baldeep Singh. Sort of an unscheduled live stream. It's just that Ishwardeep and Nihal are joining. Ishwardeep is joining from Jersey City on the East Coast, and Nihal is in Maryland. Um, so, sort of an extension of the masterclass of last night rather, where we sang and discussed about the Anjali singing of Gurbani in Rāga Mārū, which I have notated four of them recently, and I was including that. Appending that to my keynote address that I delivered on the 13th of March this year. And there was a conversation about various forms of singing. For example, Lav. People say about Lama that it's a genre, but the point is that in Rag Suhi, it is just a chant. It is not even titled as Lav. How many people realize that? We take it as if it's normal that when we talk of different rag forms, if it is Asadivar, it is actually titled. Anand is titled. Birhade, Suchaji, Kuchaji, these are titled. But Lama, the four Lama that we have, they're just another Chaw Chant, like a Chaupada, it's a four chants together. But then when we look at the old composition that comes, it's a version of Rag Suhi in which both the Gandhars are used. It is not the Suhi of the Bilawal male. Now, it is important to note that nowadays we're sort of looking at standardization of raga forms. Originally, rag was almost like a personality, like a person. A rag could be happy, a rag could be sad. Nowadays we say, no, rag has to be. Rag Bhairo is like this, rag Todi is like that, rag Gujari is happy, rag this is sad, and rag that is for fever, rag that is for whatever, rain, etc. But when we look at Baramaha, it's in rag Tukhari, but when it comes to Savan, the Mahina, it is still in Rag Tuhari. We forget that ragas were bigger than what we have dwarfed them into. Rag was like water, right? Just as Kabir Sahib says, Jo Pani Sarbang, as is the water is ang of everything. Rag is like that. If you, like poetry, for example, poetry, if you have a good poem or good lyric, it'll be a great song. If you have a stupid lyric, it'll be a stupid song. But the rag is unfazed and doesn't really give a damn. It doesn't discriminate. A great composer can use rag bhairo. A fool can also use rag bhairo. A great musician would be able to awaken the shrutis of rag kalyan. An ordinary singer would have no idea about the rag form or the swar avastha. The nature of swaras of let's say rag malkas. So ragas are like God, like the Parampurk Parameswara. It's everywhere. It's in the muck. It's in a lotus flower. It's the bloom in a rose. It is the arrogance in a thorn. It is the mud, in a root that nurtures the root where life actually is happening. It is like the umbilical cord. It's like being in the womb. Now, being in the womb is not, who knows what is it to be in a womb. We're not supposed to remember our respective states. And it is not a state that you can see in a microscope or externally. It is your own state when you're in a womb. You don't see anything there. So rag and lay is a very was a much more organic idea than it is nowadays. Now we say, oh, rag is this only, and it cannot be that. No, a rag could be anything. Rag could utilize a Varjit swara or a Vivadi swara. A rag could even change a Vadi. It could be like a let's say you can have Rag Suhi. Rag Suhi. If you look at Rag Suhi, uh, it has Pancham Vadi. It has also Madhyam Vadi. Jasi tola re ma is Madhyam Vadi Suhi. But then you have a Pancham Vadi Suhi. Halalan Ravya Kavan Gadiri Lalan Ravya Kavan Gadiri Sakhi बताओ मुझे मतीरी लालन राव्या कवन. This is a Panchamvadi Suhi. So it's the same raga, but it can change the nature. Or Panchamvadi Ghar mein Thakur घर में ठाकुर नजर ना आवे गल में पान ललट कावे. These are, for example, a raga could have one vadi or another vadi. It is the Rag Suhi Lav, therefore, is the one which is a Kāfī Mēla, which is not Suha Kannada. Like many people who are clearly not men and women of learning of the Gurbani Sangeet tradition, but who have a background in the Indian classical music, they think, oh, Suhi and Suha are the same. Suha is, of course, Margama, it is Aragama, Bani, Bani, Zani, Bam, Gama, it is, the old, Aurangalayu, Jalaluddin, Rangalayu, Jalaluddin, Agavaradamur, Rajayo, Garadhara, Rangalayu. This is, for example, Suha from the Darbari music, Akbar's time, sung by Talwandi exponents, but it was also remembered by Ustad Alawand Rahimuddin Khan. When I documented his diaries, the text is a little different text. It's just like 1-2 lines are up, ahead and below. That's usually how people who just remember that. This is Suha Kannada, but not Suhi. When you look at Lama, हर पहलड़ी लाव हर पहलड़ी लाव पर विरधि कर्म दृढ़ाया बलराम जियो बाणी ब्रह्मा वेद धर्म दृढ़ो पाप तजाया बलराम जियो. The Vakra Roop is already happening. Even if there is a use of Komal Gandhar and the Tivra Gandhar, but the Ati Vakra Swaroop of or immensely crooked form of Rag Suhi still is there. So when you look at so Gar ma ga re re sa ni re sa re re sa ni sa. So it's all crooked, doesn't go straight. And the chauthi lav, har chauthari lav man saj bhaya, hari paya balram jiyo. गुरमुख मिले आजो भाई हर मन तन मीठा लाया बलराम जी हो. So very very unique. Re re mama pa mabada pa mama gari pa pa ma pa ga re sa re ni sa re ma ma sa. All vakra, doesn't go straight. But then in the Bani it is not written as Rag Suhi this or Rag Suhi Kāfī Mēla or Rag Suhi Khamaj Mēla. It is not written like that. It's Rag Suhi. Likewise in Dhanasri, there's so many forms of Dhanasri, 6 forms. The 6th one is Dhanasriya Mishrat. It is a Mishra Shati raga in which Dhanasri, anything, I mean, it's Dhanasri, but it can take any, all forms of Dhanasri, be it the Multani Mēla, be it the Kāfī Mēla, be it the Bhairavi Mēla, be it the, the Purvi Mēla Dhanasri. Which of course has been written by Sridhar Bandyopadhyay in 1885 in his Geet Sutra Sar in Bangla, staff notated a composition Drupad of Gurbani. Hal Sridhar Bandyopadhyay in Bangla is writing 135 years ago. That is something very, very interesting. Likewise, Mārū Aṅjalīā that we were discussing yesterday, Nihal, I think you missed the class yesterday. But it's very interesting within the parampara, the discussion or the debate that is occurring. My granduncles have notated, for example, one composition which is, Birkha Hed Sab Jant Ikatthe, Ik Tate Ik Bolan Mithe, Ast Udod Bhaya Ut Chale Jyon Jyon Aud Vihaniya. And then Paap Kare Dad Sar Par Muthe, Ajrail Phade Phadkuthe, Dojak Paye Sarjanhare, Lekha Mangay Baniya. But then the asthai is kept in that composition which my granduncles have notated under Bihagra. And where I have debated that this is not actually Bihagra. The asthai of that has been kept from the third of this Ashtpada. It's Ashtpada. It's a Ashtchant actually, but nevertheless, it's an Ashtpada, and this is the 8 parts of that. It's a Tituka, whereas the first 2 tuks are small and the third tuk is that double length, technically. The composition of Kiranpal Paisab is, we are related in fact. Santur Maestro is joining from England. It's lovely to see you, Kiranpal Pa. Sangana koi bhaiya beba, mal jo bandhan chhod mangesa, karan kareem na jato karta, til peede jo kahaniyan. So this, my granduncles have notated, til peede jo kahaniyan, til peede jo kahaniyan, kahaniyan, til peede jo kahaniyan. Do sang na koi bhaiya beba, mal jo बन तन छोड़ बने सा कर्म करी मैं न जातो करता तिल पीड़े जो घाणिया तिल पीड़े जो घाण. Now this is, for example, has been classified in Bihagra. But what I have noted in all the old compositions, that Bihagra can have a form without the Tivra Madhyam, but it is always there with the Komal Nikhad. That's something very important. There's a sargam, for example, in Brag Vihag, which my granduncles write. It's a very beautiful composition, a sargam of Rag Vihag, notated by them in their book, in the 2 volumes. It goes, you will see that in this the Komal Madhyam is there, but Tivra Madhyam doesn't exist. Nowadays they call them Shuddh Swaras, etc. But Swaras are Swaras. A Swar is a Swara. We don't, in the old Gurbani Sangeet, we don't call them Shuddh or Ashuddh Swaras, or we call them Komal Tivra. Chadaya Utraya. That's our thing. Swar is a Swara. Swar is neither Shuddh or Ashuddh. It can have an avastha. But look at the sargam. My voice is all dead, but look at this. Agama sa ni da ba ga sa agama ba ni sa ni da ba ga sa ga ni sa ba ni sa sa ga re sa agama ba ga ma ba ni ga ba ma ga re sa agama ba ni sa ni da ba ga sa agama ba ga ma ba ni sa ga re sa ni da ni ni da ni da ba ga pa ma ga ma ba ni sa ba ga re sa ni da ni da pa da pa ma ga re sa ga ma pa ga ma pa ni sa ga re ma ga re sa ni da pa ma ga re sa ga ma pa ni sa. It goes something like that. I'm just trying to recall. But this is how it goes, without the Tivra Madhyam. While the compositions, when you look at Bihag, except the Sargam, they all have both the Madhyams. For example, my granduncles write, Prem laga har tir mere man, so mere man har darshan ka mera man badrapte jo khawant binani mere man. So this, for example, goes Bihag goes like that. Now, when you look at Bihagra, look at this one. Ankae, so Panida, Komal Nikhad is already featured from. Ankae Ratadaya, what the heli. Very rare composition of Bihagra. What the heli Ram, what the heli Ram, what the heli Ram, Ankae Ratadaya, what the heli Ram. पाप कमाव दया तेरा कोई न बेली राम, कोई न बेली राम, वाट दुहेली राम. Now what do we see in this? It's a Bihagra, Taksali, centuries old composition. 4 centuries at least, it has no Tivra Madhyam. So I've demonstrated to you Bihag without a Tivra Madhyam, Bihagda without a Tivra Madhyam. But then when there's a Mārū composition, Mārū has, for example, my granduncles also write the one Lekhamanga Baniya Lekhamanga Baniya Do Jag Bhai Sirjanhare Lekhamanga Baniya Lekhamanga Baniya Birkha het sab jante ikathe tatek bolan meethe Asat udot bhaya ut chale jo jo ad vihaniya lekha manga vaniya. Now, this is actually a chant singing, but of course, normally it's been sung like in a sthai antara, as if it's a dhurpad of a jhaptal. But when I have now recovered the entire system, this is given by my granduncles in Rāga Mārū. Mārū under Mārū Bihag. But my granduncles would, especially my younger granduncle, Bhai Baldeep Singh would say, कि बेटा Bihag, Mārū Bihag कह देते हैं, पर ये है नहीं. अही नहीं मानते Mārū Bihag, ये कल्याण अंग है. So, it is not actually, when he's saying it's not Bihagang, it is Kalyanang. And look how he's correct, because as I said, Bihag, he's the one who's taught me the sargams. He's the one who's taught me Bihagras without the Tivra Madhyam. That means in the old times, it was not necessary to have a Bihag. और बिहागड़ा signature of बिहागड़ा signature. This energy राग बदल गया, पर विद्वाना दियां गल्लां ने आम लोगों ਨੂੰ नहीं of course पता हो सकती है, ਉਹਦਾ ਤਾਂ ਵਿਸ਼ਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੁੰਦਾ. It is not the subject. ਇਹ ਲੋਕੀ ਖਲੀਫਾ ਨਾਂਗ ਵੀ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਨੇ, ਬਟ ਇਹ ਵਿਦਵਾਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਸਿਗਨੇਚਰਸ ਨੇ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਹੱਥਾਂ 'ਚ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਜ਼ੁਬਾਨ ਤੇ ਰਾਗਾਂ ਦੇ ਹਸਤਾਖਰ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਨੇ, ਉਹ ਘੁੱਗੀਆਂ ਜਿਹਨੂੰ ਕਹੀਏ ਰਾਗ ਦੇ ਫੀਚਰਸ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਨੇ ਦਿਖਦੇ ਨੇ. So when we look at Mārū with both the in which both the madhyams are employed, you see that it is Mārū with a kalyanang. Now many people have asked my very dear friends like Bhavdin and others, how are you playing Mārū? They say we've removed Bihag from Mārū Bihag and therefore we have Mārū. But I have again objected to that. But how is that possible? Because when you have a Chaya-lag Rag, it's not certain that it has an equal shirkat of two Rag forms. It is not necessary. For example, if you look at Devgandhari of the Bhairav Mēla, mostly it is Devgandhari of the Asa Mēla with a touch of Bhairav. You can ask me for an evidence or a praman, for a supplement, and I'll give you this. I can give you many, but I'll give you maybe one. Dujanahi ko, dujanahi ko, मैं बहुविध पे क्यों, मैं बहुविध पे क्यों, मैं बहुविध पे क्यों, दूजा नाही रिको, दूजा नाही रिको, जी खंड दीप, खंड दीप, सब भीतर रवैया प्यारे, जी खंड दीप, सब भीतर रवैया प्यारे, पूर रहो सबको, दूजा नाही रिको, दूजा नाही री. Now this is one, but then there is another Dev Gandhari of the Bhairo Mēla, which is totally different, which has a different approach. So this is predominantly Dev Gandhari Asa Mēla with a Bhairo touch, with a single note employment. Then you have another Aranadana Mai Gur Charani Chitlaya Mai Gur Charani Chitlaya Prabhu hoye kirpal kamal pargase. Prabhu hoye kir samavade sa sadrita rabamavai. The employment of both the heavens. Prabhu hoye kirpal कमल परगासे सदा सदा हृदयाय माई गुर चरनी चितलाय. This is actual Gurbani Sangeet. And contemporary, many of the ragis, ਉਹ ਕਈ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਭਾਈ ਬਲਦੀਪ ਸਿੰਘ ਸਾਡੀ ਕਦਰ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਰਦਾ ਜਾਂ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਦਾਦ ਨਹੀਂ ਦਿੰਦਾ. I mean, how do I do? Because I must see one kirtaniya first. Anybody who is only singing some ghazal, copying here or ਛੋਟਾ ਖਿਆਲ ਦੀ ਨਕਲ ਕਰ ਲਈ ਇੱਧਰ ਉੱਧਰ, ਮਾੜੀਆਂ ਮੋਟੀਆਂ ਬੰਦਿਸ਼ਾਂ ਆਪਣੀਆਂ ਬਣਾ ਲਈਆਂ ਤੇ ਆਪਣੇ ਆਪ ਨੂੰ ਗੋਡ ਗਿਫਟ ਕਹਿ ਦਿੱਤਾ, ਤੇ ਮੈਂ ਕਿਵੇਂ ਠੱਪਾ ਲਾਵਾਂ ਕਿ ਆਹ ਵੀ ਕੋਈ ਕੀਰਤਨੀਆ ਵੀ ਹੈ. Just because you remember Asa di War and you can sing a few shabad doesn't make you a kirtaniya. Kirtaniya ਉਹ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਜਿਹਦੇ ਕੋਲ ਤਵਾਰੀਖ ਹੈ ਕੀਰਤਨ ਦੀ, ਜਿਹੜਾ ਸਾਖੀ ਭਰ ਸਕਦਾ ਹੈ, who can bear witness ਕਿ ਗੁਰੂ ਨਾਨਕ ਦੇ ਕਾਲ ਦਾ ਸੰਗੀਤ ਕੀ ਸੀ, ਗੁਰੂ ਅੰਗਦ ਦੇ ਕਾਲ ਦਾ ਕੀ ਸੰਗੀਤ ਸੀ, ਗੁਰੂ ਅਮਰਦਾਸ ਦੇ ਕਾਲ ਦਾ ਕੀ ਸੰਗੀਤ ਸੀ, ਗੁਰੂ ਗੋਬਿੰਦ ਤੱਕ ਦੇ ਕਾਲ ਦਾ ਭਗਤ ਰਵਿਦਾਸ ਦਾ ਕੀ ਸੰਗੀਤ ਸੀ, ਭਗਤ ਕਬੀਰ ਦਾ ਕੀਰਤਨ ਦਾ ਅੰਗ ਕੀ ਸੀ, ਬਾਬਾ ਸ਼ੇਖ ਫਰੀਦ, ਭਗਤ ਜੈਦੇਵ, ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਸਾਖੀ ਜੋ ਭਰੇ ਕੀਰਤਨੀਆ ਉਹ ਹੈ, ਢਾਡੀ ਉਹ ਹੈ. ਸਿਰਫ ਬਾਣੀ ਤਾਂ ਕੋਈ ਵੀ ਯਾਦ ਕਰ ਸਕਦਾ. ਬਾਣੀ ਤਾਂ ਅੱਜ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਇੰਟਰਨੈਟ ਤੇ ਕਿਤੇ ਮਿਲ ਜਾਂਦੀ ਹੈ. ਗੁਟਕੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ 5 ਰੁਪਏ ਦਾ ਲੈ ਲਓ, ਕੋਈ ਭੇਟਾ ਦੇ ਕੇ ਤੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਜੋ ਮਰਜ਼ੀ ਲੈ ਲਓ. It's not a guarantee that you've been through a school, right? So these ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ compositions ਨੇ, when you look at this repertoire, you see that there is a very, very interesting dialogue which is going on. Now, point I'm making by way of these Dhanasari elements is that if I were to reverse engineer, let's say Dev Gandhari out, if I have only one composition which I sang first, Duja Main Bahubid Pekhyo, Duja Nahiri Ko, if I were to reverse engineer by removing Bhairo out, that's only one note. But then I'm still left with Dev Gandhari of the Asang. I'm not getting the entire Dev Gandhari out. Because who will tell me, unless you have the actual intangible heritage, the entire katha of that rag, as a Gurmukh Vidya, as an oral tradition. There's so much of information, but if you're not privy to that, you will think that is how Dev Gandhari is. So until you were introduced to the entire discourse of the rag, you were not supposed to have an opinion or form an opinion or create opinions or conclude things. So Mārū is an Anjali, like Mārū, Shuddh Mārū, which is called, does not employ the Tivra Madhyam. It goes differently. But Mārū Anjalis mostly, which are sung, are employing of the Kalyana. So it's a Mārū of the Kalyanang. And that goes, let's see, as I've sung one, I've reconstructed that and I am now reclassifying that as Mārū instead of Bihagada. Because Mārū, as I've mentioned, Bihagada is always with a Komal Nikhad, but not necessarily with both the Madhyams. Right? Mārū is having both Madhyams, can employ both the Nikhads, or it can also be with only one Nikhad. It is not necessary. But look at this, for example, the one that I sang earlier, just to give you the idea of the first chant of the 8. Birkhet sab jante gaathe, birkhet sab jante gaathe, ik tate ik bolan meethe, असत उदोत भयाउट चले, ज्यों ज्यों आध बेहानियां, ज्यों ज्यों आध बेहानियां, ज्यों ज्यों आध बेहानियां, बेहानियां, ज्यों ज्यों आध बेहानियां, ज्यों ज्यों आध बेहानियां, then पाप करे दड़. It continues like that. It chant ne. There is no asthai to come back to. That is the uniqueness of the chant. Now this is one. The other one that I have, there are two. There's a cluster of 2 Mārū Anjalis. The first one is Jis grah bhato, tisai grah chinta, Jis grah thori so phira bhramanta. So I have now split the two and reconstructed in the last days. I've been absent. I'm not doing Batex, but I've been writing Anjalis and notating them for the book and proofreading the book. It's almost ready to go into print now. So it goes, but let me sing the last, let me sing the first one only. Jis grah baat tisa grah chinta, jis grah thori phira bhramanta, do vibas tha tejo mukta. So this is supposed to go in Jhaptal, for example, in the 10-beat cycle. So Jis grah baat tisa grah chinta, jis grah thori so phira Brahmanta, do vibas tha tejo mukta, soi soela bhaliya, soi soela bhaliya, soi soela bhaliya. So this, for example, would be the rasam of the. Now, one thing I would want to say is that classification of the Til Pide Jo Ghaniya chant as Bihagda. Now, you look. This one is classified by my granduncles in Mārū, in the Mārū Bihag or Mārū Aṅjalīā section in the books. But this one, if you look at the antra, it is ga 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 ma pa ni sa sa ni da pa ma ga ma pa. So the other one is Bab Gare Dad Sar Par Muthe. So there's no difference. So that's I think, because when they're dealing with hundreds of compositions, it's just one composition which I think got under the through the cracks in a way. The other very, very extraordinary composition, I'm so grateful to my granduncles for having brought this extraordinary information to us into the 21st century. Sanjog Vijog Toro Panchetat Kar Utla Kiya Panche Dhat Kar Utla Kiya Farmaya ji Dehi vech Jivaye Paya. And then it goes into the next chant. Instead of making it a dhurpad of Chanchal Tal, it is actually a chant, Anjaliā chant, which then goes into the next part. So here also you see Dehi Veche. That's why my granduncle Bhai Avtar Singh would say कि बेटे बरखुरदार ए किथे है ये कल्याण अंग है ये लोग नहीं जानते ये सोचते ने कि बिहाग मारू बिहाग है क्या मारू जे दोनों मध्यम लगते ने वो कल्याण अंग है no bihagda no malka no bihag doesn't go, it is kalyanam etc. Anyway, so then it goes on J now my granduncles are and I have identified as a second Anjali Dhun. There are two compositions being sung in one, whereas like Suhi Lama have the first three lavs are in one dhun, the fourth is different. But upon analysis, I see that there are two Anjalis back to back, and the dhun is being remembered in the old times. Many times, as part of the pedagogy, they would just bring both the dhuns together. So I have continued singing in the first chant, all the four chants, and I'm singing the immediate Anjali that follows into the second dhun, which was there written by my granduncles, and that goes like this. Very, very beautiful. Vedona vai bhano pai eko sahai ram hai कीता जिसो होवै पापा मलो धोवै सो सिमरो प्रधान है घटी घटे वासी सर्व निवासी अस्थिर जा का थान है आवे न जावे संगे समावे पूर्ण जा का काम है भक्त जना का राखण हारा संत जीव है जब प्राण आधारा and then करण कारण समरथ स्वामी नानक तिस कुर्बान है. So all others are single tuks, but the fifth tuk or fifth chant is or has three lines. भगत जना का राखण हारा, full stop. संत जीव है जब प्राण आधारा, full stop. Karana Karan Samrat Swami Nanak Tis Kurban Hai. Let me just demonstrate this one. Bhagat Jana Ka Rakhan Hara Sant Jivan Jap Pran Adhara Karan Karan Samrat Swami Nanak Tis Kurban Nanak Tis Kurban This is, for example, the very, very complex restoration and conservation which I've been busy doing in the last couple of weeks, actually. What says you people?
Beautiful. There's a way in which the flow is very natural. It's not as if one is taking a text and forcing it into a melody, but the distribution of words, the melodic complementarity with the Bani, it has a natural flow to it. It's extraordinary to hear.
Ishwardeep, you had a question.
Thank you, Bhai Saab. Yeah, thank you, Bhai Saab. This was wonderful. We heard this the first time yesterday in the master class, which went on for, I think, 6 or 7 hours.
You had not heard.
And I've been listening to the recording, and then now we get to listen to it again. So thank you so much for that. It's hours and hours of work and years of training that's got us to this point with the reconstruction and the recovery of this. The follow-up that we had a conversation about Funhē, and we were starting to talk about that. And that's when we decided to go live because there was this, it was a wonderful conversation that it made sense to share it with the world. So, would love to hear your thoughts about Funhē.
The world doesn't care about the Gursikh heritage, so I don't give a damn about the world either. The day the world will begin to concern about the Guru's heritage, right now we are only busy feeding others. We are forgetting that the Guru's endowments also needs feeding. That the Vidwans, the finest minds, need nurturing so that they can become custodians of Guru's heritage. Heritage that cannot survive on its own. It's like fire. You need to provide wood, the fodder, right? It doesn't work like that. So we are all this rich people's philanthropy we do, but we forget philanthropy at home that we need to do. The philanthropy towards our own selves, our own civilizational matters, towards our conservation of intangible heritage and tangible heritage matters. And that philanthropy we don't know. We are kind to everybody else, but we are not kind to the finest thinkers, the finest philosophers, poets, writers in our midst. So I don't care about the world whether they it is good for them. It's just that I was telling you, why do you ask me questions alone on a WhatsApp call? At least have so that others will benefit. I mean, this is just ancillary in a way that we are here, where other friends, of course, can also hear. Vajid is here, Kamalji Dhawan is here, Avtar is here, Marjeet. Some of those at least who have written, Ali Raza, Asghar Ali has been listening in at least for a bit of it. Funhē is another interesting composition where the second Funhē chant. Now these occur. Funhē is part of the texts in Gurbani which are after Rag Jajavanti. That is the last raga as such. After that, no ragas figure until, the Ragmala comes along, which is the last page, last section of Guru Granth Sahib. But between Rag Jajavanti and Ragmala, there are certain texts which include Gatha, for example, which have Funhē, for example. Then there are, there are the Savaiya, slokas are there, Savaiye figure. There is Slok Sahaskriti, for example, after Jajavanti, immediately after that. And when we look at after Gatha, I think, Funhē figure. And the second Funhē is, for example, sung, is taught to be. My granduncles have notated that as well. It's in Rag Shuddh Kannada. It's a Sulfakta Drupada. So it goes, Solangi Singar Ke Anjana Baje Aji Solangi Sola Sakhi Kajal Har Tamol Kajal Har Sakhi Kajal Har Tamol Sab kich Saje Aji Solangi Singar Je ghar aave kant Je ghar aave kant ta sab kich bhaiya Solangi Singar har kant Baj Singar har kant Baj Singar Sai sab birat har kant Baj Singar sab biradha Hum birda jaiye Solagi Singar Ke hum jana baje aji Solagi Singar. Now, what needs to be seen here is that the very first thing, is that Funhē are not in a rag. There's no rag given in the title. But this composition is in Rag Shuddh Kannada. The question is, which is an important question, Funhē as a title, like Lama as I mentioned earlier, are not titled as Lam. It's just another chant in Rag Suhi. But here it is called Funhē Mahla Panjma. And you look at the chant, it is Haath Kalam Agam Mastak Lekhavati Urj Rahe O Sang Sab Sangi Anup Rupavati Ustat Kahan Na Jai Mukho Tohariya Mohi Dekh Daraz Nanak Balehariya Sant Sava, etc. It goes on, right? And the third one is the one which I, in fact, not the second one, Third one is Sakhi Kajal Har Tambol Sabakich. Haraha is the sister-in-law of Guru Arjan Dev. So these are said to be, for example, a response to her that, oh, my sister is virtuous. What virtues you behold that you think you are worthy of marrying my sister? So, in which he says, Sola kiye singar, I have adorned myself with the 16 virtues, and is a response to him that I have also adorned. I have adorned my mind, you see, is his response. But now, if Guru Arjan would have sung it, he would have sung in a rag, let's say, he would have written it like that. But this is only Funhē Malla Panjwan. Were they like a dialogue like Haath Kalam Agam Mastak Lekhavati Urj Raheo Sab Sangi Anup Rupavati Ustat Kehn Na Jaye Mukho Tohariya Mohi Dekh Daras Nanak Balehariya Sant Sawa Meh Bais Ke Kirat Main Kahan Arpi Sab Singar Eh Jio Sab Deva आस प्यासी सेज सुकंत विछाइयै हर हाँ मस्तक होवे भाग तसाजन पाइयै सखी काजल हार तंबूल सबै किछ साजया 16 किए सिंगार के अंजन पाजया जे घर आवे कंत त सब किछ पाइयै हर हाँ कंतै बाज सिंगार सब बिरथा जाइयै जिस घर वसया कंत सावड़ भागणे तिस बनया हब सीगार साई सोहागणे हाँ सुती होए अचिंत मन आस पुराइया हर हाँ जा घर आया कंत त सब किछ पाइया आसा इति आस के आस पुराइया सतगुरु भय दयाल त पूरा पाइया मैं तन अवगन बहुत के अवगन छाया हर हाँ सतगुरु भय दयाल ता मन ठहराया कहो नानक बेअंत बेअंत ध्याया दूतर एहो संसार सतगुरु तराया मिटया आवा गौण जा पूरा पाया हर हाँ अमृतो हर का नाम सतगुरु ते पाया. It's retrospect. He's telling कि मैं पा लिया. So he's now trying to, in a would-be sister-in-law, would-be brother-in-law dialogue, right? A lot of sarcasm, but a lot of bit of, I've done this too, I've done that too. But then there is also Gyan, which is Brahm Gyan, of Brahm Tat. And he's not the guru yet when the dialogue is supposed to have occurred. Or maybe it occurred later. I don't know, but the legend is that at the time when the wedding is to occur, and of course, he would have the humility not to append the term Nanak, or would not be at the time. So that's the reason why I was noting when it was sung. At least it is finalized later on. Then he continues saying that Mitya Gaund Ja Pura Paya Har Ha Amrit Hari Ka Naam Sadgur Te Paya Mera Aathi Padam Agan Sukh Basana Sahi More Kant Ratan Pekh Dukh Nasana Basa Sang Gopal Sagal Sukh Ras Har Har Ha Riddhi Siddhi Nav Nidhi Basai Jas Sadakar Partre Ravan Jahe Sei Ta Lajiyahi Nit Prati Hirhe Par Darb Chidr Kat Takiyahi Harigun Ramat Pavitra Sagal Kul Tarai Har Ha Sunte Bhai Puneet Pa Brahm Bicharai ऊपरी बने आकाश तले धर सोहती दह दिस चमकै बिजली बिजली मुख को जोहती खोजत फिरो विदेश पियो कत पाइयै हर हाँ जे मस्तक होवे भाग ता दर्श समाइयै डिठे सबे थाव नहीं तुझ जे हिया बद्धो पुरख विधाता ता तू सोहिया वसदी सगर अपार अनूप रामदासपुर हर हाँ नानक कसमल जाहे नाइये रामदास सर चात्रक चित साजन चाहिए, जिस संग लागे प्राण तिसै को आहिए, बण बण फिरत उदास बूंद जल कारणे, हर हाँ त्यों हरिजन मांगै नाम, नानक बलिहारणे। मित का चित अनूप मरम न जानिए, गाहक गुनी अपार सो तत् पछानिए। चित्त ही चित्त समाए ता होवै रंग घना, हरिहाँ चंचल चोरही मारता पावहि सच धना। सुपने उभी भई गयो की ना अंचला। We also sing this. It's a very, very beautiful composition. सुपने उभी भई गयो की ना अंचला, सुपने उभी भई गयो की ना अंचला, गयो की ना अंचला, गयो की ना अंचला। सावरी 11 बीट, 11 मात्रे का ध्रुपदा है। सुंदर पुरख विराजित. My great grand uncle Baba Jwala Singh was very famous for that, and his gamak was very famous. Bibi Jaswinder Kaur learnt it. She also remembered it, and many people, including many people from the Namdhari Darbar and others, studied from Baba Jwala Singh. They would take his name. Now people have forgotten. But Bibi Jaswinder Kaur remembered when I interviewed her in 97 or so, 96 or 7. But anyway, it was known for this. Sopanai ubi bhai gayo ki na chala, gayo ki na chala, gayo ki na अंजला। सुंदर पुरख विराजित पेख मन बंचला, कयो कीना अंचला, गयो कीना अंचला। खोजो ताके चरण कहो कत पाइयै, हर हाँ सोई जतन बताए सखी प्रिय पाइयै। नैन न देखे साध जे नैन बिहालिया, करन न सुनही नाद करन मुंदि घालिया। रसना जबै न नाम तिल तिल कर काटियै, तिल तिल कर कटियै। हरि हाँ जब बिसरै गोबिद राय दिनो दिन घटियै। पंकज फाथे पंख महामद गुंफया, अंग संग उरझाए बिसरते सुंफया। है को ऐसा मीत जे तोरे बिखम गांठ, नानक एक श्रीधर नाथ जे टूटे ले साठ। धाओ दशा अनेक प्रेम प्रभ कारणे, पंच सतावह दूत कवन विधि मारणे। तीखण बाण चलाए नाम प्रभ धाइयै, हर हाँ महा बिखादी घात पूर्ण गुर पाइयै। सतगुर कीनी दात मूल ना निखुटई, खावो भुंचो सभे गुरमुख छूटई। अमृत नाम निधान दिता तुसी हर, नानक सदा आराध कदे ना जाहे मर। जिथै जाए भगत सुथान सुहावना, सगले होए सुख हरि नाम ध्यावना। जी करनी जयकार निंदक मुए पच, साजन मनी आनंद नानक नाम जपी। पावन पतित पुनीत कतः नहीं सेवियै, झूठे रंग ख्वार कहाँ लग खेवियै। हर चंदौरी पेख ही काहे सुख मानया, हर हाँ हाँ बलिहारी तिन जे दरगह जानिया। कीने कर्म अनेक गवार विकार घन, महादुर्गंधित वास 60 का छार तन, फिर तो गर्भ गुबार, मरण नह जानई, हर हाँ हर चंदौरी पेख, काहे सच मानई। जिसकी पूजै औद तिसै कौन राखई, वैदक अनेक उपाव कहाँ लव पाखई। एको चेत गवार, काज तेरा आवई, हर हाँ बिन नावै तन छार, वृथा सब जावई। औखद नाम अपार, अमोलक पीजई, मिली मिली खावह संत, सगल कौ दीजई। जिसै प्राप्त होई, तिसै ही पावने, हर हाँ हाँ बलिहारी तिन, जे हरि रंग रावणे। वैदा संदा संग इकट्ठा होया, वैदा संदा संग इकट्ठा होया, औखद आए रास विच आप खलोया। जो जो उना कर्म सुकर्म होए पसरया, हर हाँ दुख रोग सब पाप तन ते खिसरया. Now this is the 23 Funhē chants. Now the point I would like to make is that this is, not, for example, as I've stated earlier, not in a rag form. Were they recited? Were they like poetic renditions? Or there was a way of singing that it was not a rag, it was a dhun. Many like Bhairavi is derived from a lok dhun, Multani is derived from a lok dhun, Purvi. All the ragas, most of the ragas are derived from one, folk tune or another. Then when they became rag structures, then of course one rag led to another, the entire family genealogies, and so rag, wives of the ragas, sons and daughters of the ragas, the husbands of the ragas, the father and the mothers of the ragas. Once it starts, the ball begins to roll, then one mutation is like the virus mutation. Like once you have a virus, then it can react with one vidwan and it makes two other variants. Then those variants can further. That's how knowledge also grows. It mutates like that. So we don't know how the Funhē were actually sung. As I've said that we have multiple dhuns. If you look at it, that in my, at least the memory that has been given to me, I can sing all the Funhē during the daytime in Asavari and in Kannada in the night, right? So that's already like an hour and a half or 2 hours of singing in the same rag. These are not that it's one composition that is only one. No, it is a structure of how Funhē were sung in Asavari, as I've demonstrated to you, and also in the Shuddh Kannada when it is day, post sunrise, and then post sunset, 12 hours apart. 2 demonstrations I've given. But originally, it is just Funhē Mahla Panjwa. Likewise, there are many other compositions like Suchaji Kuchaji. I have not come across a composition that will take me back in time. Many contemporary people have done, a lot of research has been done, but not the one that, actually, more research is more, people mistake the idea of research. They think taking a pada from Gurbani and composing a composition is part of research. No, that is just part of contemporary compositional structures. Research is when you go out and search and you find something. Or when you don't find something, you tell that these are the masters you went to, and I could not. And this was the question I asked. Let's say, excuse me, sire, do you know how to sing Kuchaji and Suchaji? And if you get an answer no, then you say, well, I got no. You have to tick. And then you say eventually that, well, I have not received this composition structure. So it can be said that it has died maybe a generation back. At least this generation did not know. But now that I'm left with no other choice, so I'm going to now compose it on my own. Or I can request, or I'm going to request another Vidwan whom I think is a great composer, who's not just a contemporary composer, but also has grounding in the tradition. That will take me very close, a new composition, but which will keep me close to the tradition. So if you take that journey in the world, if you are part of the world of learning, or if you are a citizen of the world of learning, then you will take this recourse of creating something new. Then it is part of research. But if you just take something and you make your own, plagiarizing a tune here or inspired from something else, I refuse to accept it as a fruit of research. Who wants to respond first? Nihal, you first or Ishwardeep? Ishwardeep, actually, why don't you go first? Your response.
Thank you, Faisab. This is a wonderful explanation. And it also, the avenues for research and the clarification on what actual research is, that is also very helpful for the current generations and future generations as well. But the idea of what's there, what's not there, what's left and what's not left, and the academic honesty around that, the fact that Suchaji Kuchaji you haven't come across in your years with the masters, it's very important for us as students to understand, what that means, and then the fact that all that has come through, and what do we make of that as the current and future generations. All those ideas are just sort of brimming with those ideas, and thank you for that explanation.
Glad. Nihal, you.
It's a very rare form of attendance that you're able to bestow upon all that you've received. This sort of analysis, looking at particular dhuns that are associated with particular shabads, as they're notated in Bhai Avtar Singh and Bhai Gurcharan Singh's 2 volumes, but then looking at the Bani again and noting that there isn't a rag associated with that, but then noting that the Gur Khalsa has, not in recent times, but over the centuries, sung Funhē in this manner, and that these are actually structures that beautifully can be used to sing the entirety of that Bani, both in Shuddh
That they were
Kannada.
used, actually, not that they can be, not in prospective, but they were sung.
That they were.
Yeah.
That it isn't just for those portions, but it's an overall structure for singing it within that rag system. That's just a brilliant insight, and shows that there's something very different between the sort of research that's done on the basis of contemporary notions of Shastriya Sangeet, and that comes from having undergone the emic pedagogy of the Gurbani Sangeet Parampara, and then looking at the assets that exist within it, and just the semantic precision, the academic integrity, the humility, honesty, and candor that comes from noting what exists and what no longer exists. These sort of epistemic qualifications really allow one to take that which has come down and the ascriptions regarding it, that this is original Shabadrit of the Guru. It allows one to take those sorts of extraordinary remembrances in their proper context, because when there isn't that sort of knowledge, that's the sort of thing that the parampara has absolutely no problem in acknowledging. So this is just so valuable. But by way of conclusion, you had mentioned that in a class yesterday, you had spoken of Holī and how this has actually been sung within the Gurbani Sangeeta Parampara. And since I wasn't able to attend, and since so many friends have joined with us, I would request that you speak about Holī and how it's been sung.
Well, Holī, one, that it is part of Basant only. It is originally it has been sung as Shuddh Basant, but then in the Holī Kāfī Ang also it has been sung by, it's a dhamar, which is few composers, but one of the one that I shared yesterday was a dhamar. Let me see. Rang laga adilal dev rang laga adilal dev Holī Sant Save. It's, for example, one
Wow.
way of singing it. And then there is Buddha Basant, for example, very rare rag which was sung in our system, in our tradition. It is a very, very unique. This rag, I don't think exists anywhere else apart from what we have we've been taught. This one also goes goes way back and demonstrates the composition, but also the ambit, the understanding of this Ragnath system in the Gurbani. This has been sung very beautifully well. I'll give a demonstration of that as well if you want. Gur Seva Kar Namaskar Aaj Hamare Mangal Chaar Gur Seva Kar Namaskar Aaj Hamare Mangal Chaar Aaj Hamare Aaj Hamare Manand Chint Lathi Bhete Gobind Holī Sant Save. Holī Holī Sant Save. Rang laga लाल देव रंग लगाती लाल देव होली की निशांत सेव रंग लगाती लाल देव घोर सेवा. This is, anyway, my voice is all dead. But just to give you an idea of how Holi has been sung, in of course, in the pure Basant, just Shuddh Basant, but then also in Basant, in the Holi, in the Kāfī Mēla, and then Holi in Rāga Mārū Basant, very rare, very rare Rag. Old Basant.
Wonderful.
Does that make any sense?
Thank you.
Any other questions? Ishwardeep, you have to go back to work also.
Yes.
It's a work
Yes.
day. Did you miss your appointment? Did you escape?
They can wait.
Okay. All right. Nihal, what are you doing today?
Well, I have been writing for the Vital Engine. Exciting things are in the works. I've been writing poetry these days, so hopefully there's more to come.
Yes, I love to hear sometimes. Maybe you should share your poetry with us sometimes. Look forward to your Vital Engine article. Is it already posted on your blog or?
I had published a poem called A Song of Basant for this month's issue, so I'm a little ahead of schedule this month, and I'm working on the next month's piece now.
I see. Okay. You've been lucky because not many Baithaks have happened and you didn't have to work on the biographies a lot for the Nihal Foundation.
But Professor Ranjit Singh, that's going to be very exciting.
Yeah. You want to see something? You want to have some fun?
Absolutely.
Ishwardeep, you have to rush or you have a few minutes?
I do need to rush myself,
so
so I'll drop off.
Yeah, you can catch up later on this. This will be there. But I actually have been editing, something. Let me show you guys. What happened? Yeah. Okay, there you are. So I was editing Professor Ranjit Singh's video from, the interview that I shot in 2016 when I visited. You wanna see portion of that?
Absolutely.
I thought I'll post it, but then I thought let it be. Then I decided not to post it. But let's have a look. In fact, before we go there, let me share the poster of his. How can I share that here? Let me go here first, and then I can bring the poster from here. Here we are. This is the poster that we have of his. Friends, all those who are listening, kindly spread the word. Tomorrow at 8:30 p.m. India time and 8 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, Professor Ranjit Singh, otherwise known as Tan Tan by friends and students and family, he'll be joining from the Bhai Baldeep Institute of Music that he runs in Los Angeles. So that is one. And so let me now see if I can dig out the video that I have been editing. Let's see. It's to do with tabla, by the way. Let's have a look.
ਦੇ ਦਾਵ ਗਾਂਠ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਦੱਸੇ ਸੀ, ਬੋਲਣ ਦੇ ਨਿਕਾਸ ਦੱਸੇ ਸੀ। ਜਦੋਂ ਮੈਂ ਸਿੱਖ ਕੇ ਗਿਆ ਤੇ ਮੈਂ ਵਜਾ ਰਿਹਾ ਸੀ। ਬੇਟਾ ਤੇ ਪਾਊਡਰ ਪਾਉਂਦਾ, ਉਹਨੇ ਪੁੱਛਣਾ
Go a little ahead. Go from here.
ਇਹ ਨਾਲ ਗੂ 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 ਕਰਦਾ, ਇਹ ਨਹੀਂ ਵੀ ਦਾ ਦਿਨ ਦਿੰਦਾ ਦਾ ਦਿਨ ਦਿੰਦਾ ਦਾ ਦਿਨ ਦਿੰਦਾ ਦਾ ਦਿਨ ਦਿੰਦਾ ਦਾ ਦਿਨ ਨਹੀਂ। ਉਹ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਸੀ ਇੱਕੋ ਜਿਹਾ ਜਾਣਾ ਚਾਹੀਦਾ। ਦਾਬ ਗਾਂਠ ਉਹ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ 4 ਭਾਗ ਨੇ, ਜੇ ਅਸੀਂ 4 ਭਾਗਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਅੱਡ ਨਹੀਂ ਕੱਢਦੇ ਤਾਂ 3 ਤਾਲ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੋਏਗਾ, ਮਾਤਰਾ ਹੋਣਗੀਆਂ ਤੁਹਾਡੀਆਂ। ਜੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਇਸੇ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਵਜਾਈ ਜਾਓਗੇ ਬੇਟਾ, ਦਾ ਦਿਨ ਦਿੰਦਾ ਦਾ ਦਿਨ ਦਿੰਦਾ ਦਿੰਦਾ ਦਾ ਦਿਨ ਦਿੰਦਾ ਦਾ ਦਿਨ ਦਿੰਦਾ ਦਾ ਦਿਨ ਦਿੰਦਾ ਦਾ ਦਿਨ ਦਿੰਦਾ ਦਾ ਦਿਨ, ਕੋਈ ਮੀਨਿੰਗ ਨਹੀਂ। ਜੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਇਹਨੂੰ ਵੰਡ ਕਰੋਗੇ, ਭਾਗ ਇਹਦੇ ਕਰੋਗੇ, ਤੇ ਫਿਰ ਇਹ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਤਾਲ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਇਹ ਲੱਗੇਗਾ। ਉਹਦੀ ਵੰਡ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਨਜ਼ਰ ਆਵੇ, ਸਮਝਣ ਵਾਲੇ ਨੂੰ, ਗਾਣ ਵਾਲੇ ਨੂੰ ਸਹੂਲਤ ਮਿਲ ਜਾਏਗੀ। ਜੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸਿੱਧੇ ਵੀ ਜਾਏ ਜਾਓਗੇ ਤਾਂ ਕੋਈ ਮੀਨਿੰਗ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੋਏਗਾ, ਅਰਥ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈਗਾ। ਸੋ ਇਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਜਦੋਂ ਸਮਝਾਉਣਾ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਕਿਆ ਆਵਾਜ਼ ਇਦੋਂ ਵੱਧ ਨਹੀਂ ਸੀ ਕਰਦੇ।
He's talking about Ustad Bahadur.
ਇਸ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ ਇਹ ਨਹੀਂ ਸ਼ੋਰ ਨਹੀਂ, ਮੈਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਤਬਲੇ ਛੁੜਿਆ। ਉਹ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਜਦ ਅਸੀਂ ਮਿਲਾ ਲਿਆ ਇਹਦੇ ਨਾਲ, ਜਦ ਇਹਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਮਿਲ ਗਿਆ ਤਾਂ ਸਾਡੀ ਆਂਸ ਇਹਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਮਿਲੀ ਰਹਿਣੀ ਚਾਹੀਦੀ ਹੈ। ਤੇ ਜਦ ਮੈਂ ਗਿਆ, ਭਾਈ ਬੇਦੀ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਬੈਠੇ ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਨੇ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਸ਼ਾਗਿਰਦ ਕਰਾਇਆ, ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਨੇ ਕਿਹਾ ਹਾਂ ਵਰਦ ਸਿੰਘ ਸ਼ਾਗਿਰਦ ਕਰੋ, ਫਿਰ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਇਹ ਸੀ ਵੀ ਸ਼ਾਗਿਰਦ ਕਰੋ ਮੁੜ ਕੇ ਲੜੂ ਪਾਨ ਹੋਏਗਾ। ਸ਼ਾਗਿਰਦ ਕਰ ਲਿਆ ਤੇ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਸੁਣਿਆ, ਬੇਦੀ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਨੂੰ ਸੁਣਾਇਆ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਬੇਦੀ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਨੂੰ ਸੁਣਾਇਆ ਵੀ ਬੇਦੀ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਦੇਖੋ ਇਹ ਹੁਣ ਇੱਥੋਂ ਤੱਕ ਵਜਾ ਰਿਹਾ। ਜਦ ਮੈਂ ਵਜਾ ਰਹੀ ਤਦ ਤੱਤਰ ਧਿਮ 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 ਨਿਦਾਮ ਨਿਦਮ ਸ਼ਮ 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 ਨਾ ਵਰਸ ਵਰਸ ਨਿਰਤ ਕਰਤ ਕ੍ਰਿਸ਼ਨਾ ਕ੍ਰਿਸ਼ਨਾ ਨਿਰਤ ਕਰਤ ਕ੍ਰਿਸ਼ਨਾ ਕ੍ਰਿਸ਼ਨਾ ਨਿਰਤ ਕਰਤ ਕ੍ਰਿਸ਼ਨਾ 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 ਏਦਾਂ ਬੋਲ ਵੀ ਜਾਣਾ ਸੀ। ਮੈਂ ਫਿਰ ਬੋਲ ਰਿਹਾ ਕੱਟਾ ਕੱਟ ਤੱਕ ਦਬੜਦਾ ਆਂਦਾ ਕਿਤੇ ਟਿਕਟ ਦਿਨ ਦਿਨ ਤੱਕ ਟਿਕਟ ਤੱਕ ਟਿਕਟ ਕਰ ਗਿਣਨਾ ਆਂਦਾ ਕਿਤੇ ਟਿਕਟ ਕਹਿ ਤਰੀਕੇ ਕਰਾਇਆ ਨਾ ਦੇ ਨਾ ਦੇ ਇਹ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਉਸਤਾਦ ਨੇ ਦੱਸਿਆ, ਏਦਾਂ ਮੈਂ ਕਰਦਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਸੀਗਾ। ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਮੈਂ ਕੀ ਕਰਦੀ, ਕਹਿ ਕੱਟਾ ਕੱਟ ਤੱਕ ਤੱਕਦਾ ਆਂਦਾ ਕਿਤੇ ਟਿਕਟ ਇੱਕੋ ਜਿਹਾ ਚਲੇ ਜਾਣਾ ਬੋਲਦਾ, ਕੱਟਾ ਕੱਟ ਤੱਕ ਤੱਕਦਾ ਆਂਦਾ ਕਿਤੇ ਟਿਕਟ ਦੇ ਦਿਨ ਤੇ ਟਿਕਟ ਤੱਕ ਟਿਕਟ ਕੱਟ ਕੇ ਆਂਦਾ ਕਿਤੇ ਟਿਕਟ ਕੱਟ ਕਹਿ ਤਰੀਕੇ ਆਂਦਾ ਆ ਦੇਣੇ ਤੇ ਦਾ ਇੱਕੋ ਜਿਹਾ ਬੋਲ ਪੜੀ ਜਾਣਾ। ਉਹ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਇਹਦਾ ਕੋਈ ਅਰਥ ਨਹੀਂ। ਇਹਨੂੰ ਜਦੋਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਵਜਾਓਗੇ ਤਾਂ ਧਾ ਕੇ ਤੱਕ ਤੱਕ ਧਾਨ ਧਾਗੇ ਤੇ ਟਿਕਟ ਦੇਨ 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 ਧਾਗੇ ਤੇ ਟਿਕਟ ਧਾਗੇ ਤੇ ਟਿਕਟ ਕੱਟ ਘਿੰਨੜਾ। ਜੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕੱਟ ਘਿੰਨੜਾ ਦੇ ਟਿਕਟ ਦੇ ਤਾਂ ਕੋਈ ਮੀਨਿੰਗ ਹੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਇਹਦਾ। ਤਾਂ ਧਾਗੇ ਤੱਕ ਇਹ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਸਾਊਂਡ ਪੂਰੀ ਰਹਿਣੀ ਚਾਹੀਦੀ ਹੈ। ਦੇਨ ਜੇ ਥੋੜੀ ਸਾਊਂਡ ਉੱਥੇ ਬੰਦ ਹੋ ਜਾਈਏ ਤਾਂ ਦਾਨ ਤੱਕ ਟਿਕਟ ਦੇਨ ਕੁਛ ਨਹੀਂ ਬਣਿਆ ਨਾ। ਬੋਲ ਥੱਥਾ ਹੋ ਗਿਆ ਬੋਲ, ਇਹਨੂੰ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਬੋਲ ਥੱਥਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਰਨਾ, ਬੋਲ ਨੂੰ ਕੰਟੀਨਿਊਟਲੀ ਉਹਦੀ ਆਂਸ ਉਹਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਮਿਲਣੀ ਚਾਹੀਦੀ। ਉਹ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਜੇ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਦੇਨ ਦੇਟ ਕਿਸੇ ਨੂੰ ਪਤਾ ਹੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਲੱਗਾ, ਜੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਇਹਨੂੰ ਫਸਾ ਕੇ ਫਿਸਲਾ ਕੇ ਰੌਲਾ ਪਾ ਕੇ ਕੱਢ ਜਾਓਗੇ ਉਸ ਬੋਲ ਦਾ ਕੋਈ ਮੀਨ ਨਹੀਂ। ਉਹ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਹੈ ਨਾ ਦੇਨ ਦੇ ਦੇਨ ਦੇਟ ਇਹ ਸਵਾਦ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਦੇ ਬੋਲ ਹੀ ਦੇ ਸਕਦੇ ਨੇ। ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਹੋਰ ਕਿਸੇ ਪ੍ਰਾਂਤ ਦਾ ਪਖਾਵਜ ਹੋਵੇ ਜਾਂ ਆਵਾਜ਼ ਹੋਵੇ ਕੋਈ ਵੀ ਹੋਵੇ ਉਹਨੇ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਉਹ ਬੋਲ ਨਹੀਂ ਦੇਣਾ। ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਰੌਲਾ ਲੱਗਿਆ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਤਿਹਾਈ ਵਿੱਚ ਉਹ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਨਹੀਂ ਲੱਭੇਗੀ ਜੋ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਵਿੱਚ ਲੱਭੇਗੀ। ਫਿਰ ਉਹ ਕਹਿਣ ਲੱਗੇ ਕਹਿਤ ਟਿਕੇਗੀ ਤੇਰੇ ਕਾਨ ਦਾ, ਕਹਿਤ ਟਿਕੇਗੀ ਤੇਰੇ ਕਾਨ ਦਾ, ਕਾਨ ਦਾ। ਹੁਣ ਜੇ ਕਹਿ ਕਹਿਤ ਟਿਕੇਗੀ ਤੇਰੇ ਕਲਾ ਕਲਾ ਨਹੀਂ, ਕੁਛ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ, ਇਹ ਕੁਛ ਨਹੀਂ। ਸਾਰਾ ਮੇਰਾ ਤਬਲਾ ਬਣਿਆ ਬਣਾਇਆ, ਜਿਹਨੂੰ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ 'ਚ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਨਾ, ਪੰਜਾਬੀ 'ਚ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਸਾਰਾ ਤਬਲਾ ਬਣਿਆ ਬਣਾਇਆ ਵਾੜ ਕੇ ਰੱਖ ਦਿੱਤਾ। ਤੇ ਜਦ ਮੈਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਪਹਿਲੀ ਵਾਰੀ ਸੁਣਿਆ, ਮੈਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਪਹਿਲੀ ਵਾਰੀ ਸੁਣਿਆ ਉਸਤਾਦ ਗੁਰਬਖਸ਼ ਸਿੰਘ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਦੋਸਤ ਸੀਗੇ ਨਿਰਮਲ ਸਿੰਘ ਘੜੀ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਲੁਧਿਆਣੇ ਵਾਲੇ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਪੋਤਰੇ ਦਾ ਜਨਮ ਦਿਨ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਭਾਈ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਦੇ ਜਾਣਾ ਆਪਾਂ ਜਿਸ ਕੋਲ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਇੱਕ ਕਿਤਾਬ ਛਪੀ, ਉਹਦੀ ਕ੍ਰਿਸ਼ਮਾ ਕਿਤਾਬ ਭਾਈ ਸਮੁੰਦਰ ਸਿੰਘ ਜੀ ਦੇ ਲਈ ਮੈਂ ਕ੍ਰਿਸ਼ਮਾ ਇੱਕ ਲਿਖਿਆ ਹੈਗਾ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਯਾਦ ਦਾ ਇੱਕ ਕ੍ਰਿਸ਼ਮਾ। ਉਹ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਮੇਰੇ ਧਿਆਨ 'ਚ ਆ ਗਿਆ, ਤੁਸੀਂ ਜਾਣਾ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਕੋਲੇ, ਅਤੇ ਜੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਕੋਲੇ ਹੋਈ ਤਾਂ ਪੜ੍ਹਨਾ ਮੈਂ ਕ੍ਰਿਸ਼ਮਾ ਕੀ ਲਿਖਿਆ ਉਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਉਹਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ। ਅਤੇ ਉੱਥੇ ਸਾਰੇ ਪੰਡਿਤ ਕ੍ਰਿਸ਼ਨ ਰਾਓ ਆਏ, ਸਾਰੇ ਲੋਕ ਬੈਠੇ, ਸਾਰੇ ਲੋਕ ਜਦ ਬੈਠੇ ਆ ਅਤੇ ਕਹਿਣ ਲੱਗੇ ਉਸਤਾਦ ਹੋਣਾ ਵੀ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਵੀ ਤਬਲਾ ਵਜਾਓ। ਉਸਤਾਦ ਵਾਲੀ ਨਾਂ ਨੁਕਰ ਕਰਨ ਲੱਗੇ, ਨਹੀਂ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਥੋੜ੍ਹਾ ਨਕਲ ਤਾਂ ਕਰਨਾ ਹੀ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਨਾ। ਅਤੇ ਮਗਰ ਫਿਰ ਘੜੀ ਸਾਜ ਗੁਰਬਖਸ਼ ਸਿੰਘ ਜੀ ਕਹਿਣ ਲੱਗੇ ਨਹੀਂ ਬਾਦ ਸਿੰਘ, ਉਹ ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਉਸਤਾਦ ਜੀ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਘੜੀ ਸਾਜ ਜੀ ਦੇ ਸਿਕਰ ਜੀ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਜਾਓ, ਅੱਛਾ ਜੀ ਠੀਕ ਹੈ। ਫਿਰ ਕੋਈ ਨਗਮਾ ਲਾਉਣ ਨੂੰ ਤਿਆਰ ਹੋਏ, ਕੁਦਰਤੀ ਆਪਣੇ ਬੈਠੇ ਸੀਗੇ ਭਵਰਾ ਸਾਹਿਬ, ਭਵਰੇ ਨੂੰ ਆਦਤ ਸੀ ਨਗਮਾ ਲਾਉਣ ਦੀ। ਜੇ ਮੈਂ ਜਾਵਾਂ, ਪੀਰ ਜਾਵੇ, ਮਿੰਦਰ ਸਿੰਘ ਜਾਵੇ ਜਾਂ ਰਣਜੋਤ ਜਾਵੇ, ਕੋਈ ਵੀ ਜਾਵੇ, ਉਹਨੂੰ ਨਗਮਾ ਲਾਉਣ ਦੀ ਆਦਤ ਸੀ, ਉਹ ਪੱਕਾ ਇਸ ਨਗਮੇ ਦਾ। ਉਹ ਕਹਿਣ ਲੱਗਾ ਉਸਤਾਦ ਜੀ ਮੈਂ ਲਾਵਾਂ, ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਠੀਕ ਹੈ ਠੀਕ ਆ ਜਾ ਤੂੰ। ਉਹਨੇ ਨਗਮੇ ਲਾਇਆ, ਪੁੜਾ ਮਿਲਾਇਆ ਨਾ ਜੀ, ਹਾਂ। ਇਹ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ ਆਵਾਜ਼ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਕੰਨ ਤੱਕ ਦੀ ਆਵਾਜ਼ ਸੀ, ਉਹ ਟਿਊਨ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਸੀ। ਇਹ ਆਸ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਸੁਣਦੀ ਉੱਥੋਂ ਤੱਕ ਰੌਲਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈ। ਇਹਦੇ ਕਰਕੇ ਜਦੋਂ ਉਹਨੇ ਮਿਲਾ ਕੇ ਆਇਆ ਆਵਾਜ਼ ਮਾਰੇ, ਸਾਰਾ ਪੰਡਾਲ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਭਰ ਗਿਆ। ਅਤੇ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਕੀ ਕੀਤਾ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਉਠਾਨ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਕੀਤੀ, ਫਿਰ ਸਰ ਮੈਂ ਵੀ ਕੀਤੀ ਹੈ। ਢਾ ਕੇ ਨਕਤਾ ਕਿ ਨਕੜਦਾ ਕਿ ਨਕਤਾ ਕਿ ਨਕਤਾ ਕਿ ਨਕੜਦਾ ਕਤਾ ਕਿ ਨਕਤਾ ਢਾ ਕੇ ਨਕਤਾ ਕਿ ਨਕੜਦਾ ਕਿ ਨਕਤਾ ਕਿ ਨਕੜਦਾ ਕਿ ਨਕੜਦਾ ਕਿ ਨਕੜਦਾ ਕਿ ਇੱਦਾਂ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਕੀਤਾ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ। ਕੀ ਸੀ ਦਾਗ ਨਕਤਾ ਕਿ ਨਕੜਦਾ ਕਿ ਨਕਤਾ ਕਿ ਨਕਤਾ ਕਿਰਦਾ ਕਤਾ ਕਿਰਦਾ ਕਿਰਦਾ ਕਿ ਤਰਕੜ ਕਿ ਤਰਕੜਦਾ ਕਿ ਨਕਤਾ ਤਰਕੜਦਾ ਕਿ ਨਕਤਾ ਕਿਰਦਾ ਕਿ ਤਰਕੜ ਕਿ ਤਰਕੜਦਾ ਕਿ ਨਕਤਾ ਤਰਕੜਦਾ ਕਿ ਨਕਤਾ ਮੈਂ ਵਜਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਰਿਹਾ। ਜਦੋਂ ਮੈਂ ਵਜਾਉਂਦਾ ਸੀ ਉਦੋਂ ਦੀ ਗੱਲ ਕੁਛ ਹੋਰ ਸੀ। ਮੈਂ ਡਰਦਾ ਵਜਾਉਣ ਤੋਂ ਵੀ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਲੋਕ ਸੁਣਨ ਵਾਲੇ ਉਹ ਕਹਿਣਗੇ ਕਿਆ ਕਰਦਾ, ਕਿਆ ਕਰ ਰਿਹਾ। ਪਰ ਨਹੀਂ, ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਹੁਕਮ ਮੈਂ ਮੰਨਣਾ, ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਅੱਜ ਇੰਨਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਮੇਰੇ ਕੋਲ, ਕੱਲ੍ਹ ਨੂੰ ਇਹ ਵੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੋਣਾ। ਅਵਸਥਾ ਹੈ ਨਾ, ਇੱਕ ਕਸਬਲ ਦੀ ਗੱਲ ਹੈ। ਅਤੇ ਕਾਇਦਾ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਕੀਤਾ ਭਾਈ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਜੀ ਬਲਦੀਪ ਜੀ, ਅਤੇ ਕਾਇਦਾ ਉਦੋਂ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਮੈਂ ਵੀ ਵਜਾਉਂਦਾ ਸੀ, ਹੋਰ ਵੀ ਲੋਕ ਵਜਾਉਂਦੇ ਸੀ। ਭਾਈ ਮਹਿੰਦਰ ਸਿੰਘ ਅਤੇ ਮੈਂ ਇਕੱਠੇ ਰਹਿੰਦੇ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਸੀ ਇੱਕੇ ਕਮਰੇ 'ਚ, ਅਸੀਂ ਵੀ ਵਜਾਉਂਦੇ ਸੀਗੇ। ਮਗਰ ਜੋ ਉਸਤਾਦ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਹੋਏ ਨਾ ਇਸ ਬੋਲ ਨੂੰ, ਡਟ ਪਤਾ ਹੀ ਨਾ ਲੱਗੇ ਕਿਹੜਾ ਬੋਲ ਵਜਾ ਰਹੇ। ਮੋਤੀ ਪਰੋਈ ਤੇ ਛੋਟਾ ਜਿਹਾ ਕੱਦ ਸੀ, ਤੁਸੀਂ ਦਰਸ਼ਨ ਕੀਤੇ ਹੋਣਾ?
ਨਹੀਂ ਮੈਂ ਕਿਤੇ ਨਹੀਂ, ਪਰ ਮੈਂ ਜਾਣਦਾ ਕਿ
ਛੋਟਾ ਜਿਹਾ ਕੱਦ, ਤੇ ਇਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਕਰਕੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਉਸ ਬੋਲ ਨੂੰ ਫਿਰ ਏਦਾਂ ਕਰਕੇ ਕਹਿਣਾ, ਉਸ ਬੋਲ ਨੂੰ ਕਹਿਣਾ ਡਟ ਦੇਖੋ ਦਗੇ ਨਾ ਡਟ ਕਰਨਾ। ਇਹ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਜੇ ਬੰਦਾ ਗੱਲ ਕਰ ਰਿਹਾ, ਗੱਲ ਕਰਨ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਹੁੰਗਾਰਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਦੇ ਰਹੇ, ਜੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਹੁੰਗਾਰਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਭਰ ਰਹੇ ਤੇ ਮੇਰੀ ਗੱਲ ਦਾ ਕੋਈ ਦਮ ਨਹੀਂ ਮੇਰੀ ਗੱਲ ਵਿੱਚ। ਇਹ ਹੁੰਗਾਰਾ ਹੈ, ਇਹ ਪੁੜਾ ਹੈ, ਇਹ ਨਾਰਾ ਹੈ, ਮਦੀਨ ਹੈ। ਇਸਤਰੀ ਮਰਦੀ ਦੀ ਜਿਵੇਂ ਗੱਠਬਾਤ ਹੋਣੀ ਚਾਹੀਦੀ, ਐਵੇਂ ਹੀ ਇਸ ਦੇ ਬੋਲ ਦੀ ਦਾਬ ਦੀ ਗਾਂਠ ਹੋਣੀ ਚਾਹੀਦੀ। ਜਿਵੇਂ ਕਬੂਤਰ ਕੁਟਕੂ ਫਿਰਦਾ ਤੇ ਜੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਸਿੱਧੇ ਵੀ ਦਰਦ ਕਿੰਨੇ ਦਾ ਲੱਗ ਦੇਣਾ ਕਿੰਨੇ ਦਰਦ ਕਿੰਨੇ ਦਾ ਦਰਦ ਲੱਗ ਦੇਣਾ ਕਿੰਨੇ ਦਰਦ ਕਿੰਨੇ ਦਾ ਦਰਦ ਦਾ ਕੋਈ ਮੀਨਿੰਗ ਹੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈ ਇਹ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਨੀ ਹੈ ਫਿਰ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਇੱਦਾਂ ਕਰਕੇ ਨਾ ਇੱਦਾਂ ਕਿ ਦਮ ਬਣਾਏ ਹੁਣ ਉਦੋਂ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੋ ਸਕਦਾ ਜਿਵੇਂ ਇਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਕਰਨਾ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਕੀਤਾ ਫਿਰ ਮੇਰੇ ਦਿਮਾਗ 'ਚ ਇਹ ਗੱਲ ਬਲਦੀਪ ਜੀ ਆਈ ਸਰ ਪਾਣੀ ਪੀਣੇ ਦਾ ਲੱਗਾ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਫਿਰ ਮੇਰੇ ਦਿਮਾਗ 'ਚ ਇਹ ਗੱਲ ਆਈ ਸਿੱਖਾ ਸਮਝ ਆ ਗਈ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਅਕਲ ਆ ਗਈ
Oh, fantastic, isn't it?
Absolutely.
His humility, ਜਿਹੜੀ ਹਲੀਮੀ ਹੈ or when he remembers his teacher, Ustad Bahadur Singh, it's very, very moving actually. Very particular when he recalls him. And the way he describes, the aesthetical prowess, if I may, of Ustad Bahadur Singh. His understanding of what is, and look at the, Saundarya, Shastri Gal, the Dab Gut, the grammar that he's talking about, that how evolved was the playing, and that we can see from the kind of evolved conversation that Ustad Bahadur Singh was having with his students. What did you make of this?
It was wonderful hearing these terms of aesthetic description that were part of the pedagogical discourse of the old tabla of Punjab. And it's so evocative how there's a distinction between playing that's just sort of making noise versus that which is meaningful. And that there has to be a conversational dynamic to the bulls that they actually speak, as the name would suggest. So hearing this old terminology and these memories of Ustad Bahadur Singh is very beautiful to see.
Well, I'm glad that we could get together. Ishwardeep must be back at work. He ran like this. He didn't even wait for me to start the video. That the exit would have been more silent. I'll fight with him later. Anything else before we leave?
Thank you so much, Bhai Sabji. This was really wonderful. Very impromptu, and so glad you were able to take the time out and share all of this with all of us.
Did you see my... I addressed that article and etc. with Jasdeep. It was very painful for me to address that. I'm yet to do it in Punjabi as well, but of course I'll have to write my notes in Punjabi before I go. I'll see, but very painful for me. I don't know what to make of this. Why do people have to what is the point they're proving by questioning? Even when you attack a tradition for even the names of their own elders, people forget that people used to have names, and when they are given Amrit, sometimes they're even given a new name. A Sikh should know that. It's like, and then you were saying that, that the tradition doesn't remember the name of its own teacher. What is this discourse? Where does one get this kind of courage to, what does one think of oneself? How lowly can one stoop to, before making such insinuations and submissions?
It's a very unfortunate dynamic. It's miraculous that as much as exists, you've been able to recover in going to so many grand elders, many of whom had been neglected by those institutions within Punjab as divided, the political entity, and by the nation's governing bodies that should have been responsible for safeguarding the intangible riches of South Asia. And when these institutions failed to do the needful, and so-called researchers and scholars of the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, they failed to do the needful, it was really your going out in search of the authentic traces of the music of the Guru Ghar that preserved from extinction that which, by Guru's grace, survives until the present, and now is being minted once again. And to see these sorts of groundless conjectures coming from within the community, and this callous disregard for the field work that you did that created the field in its contemporary manifestation, everything else is a derivative of this. It's just a very, very unfortunate dynamic that's emerged, that there are those that foolhardily would really overlook that which you have allowed to live once more, and rather than forming an opinion upon the parampara, having undergone it, are content to just dismiss things from afar and to sow baseless doubts from afar.
It's very sad, it's as if there is nothing better to do. People have tried in the past, to try and smear the old guard, to try and make their own name and fame, or climb, some imaginary ladders by trampling upon the dignity of others. But is that honorable? Is that how one needs to attend to? And I did not even want to touch upon the quality of music that these fellows in question are yet capable of. They are students, and not even advanced students yet, and they are making very advanced insinuations or conclusions on the tradition. When a person is not even sourced information, like I am 41 years behind me, of learning, 40 into my 42nd year of learning of the tradition. My analysis of Anjalis, and I've just demonstrated in this conversation how even I am given the freedom to agree and disagree with the elders, because they are dealing in thousands of compositions, and one small thing can slip here and there. It can easily get one classification. It is not a wrong classification, because a chayalag or a blended kind of a composition can actually exist in both the spheres. It is okay existing in a Bihagada space, but I'm saying, but it belongs to Mārū cluster, right? And it is not that within the tradition we are only about worship, about psychophancy, right? Here we are given, as and as we evolve, the more rights we get to question. Our questions become more and more mightier, and the romances that we are given extraordinary answers, because now it's as if one has become of age, and the parampara is glad to converse at that level as well. And it's never, my experience of parampara is that the tradition is never shy. It does not shirk away, is not irked, is only glad to be faced with a beautiful question. Which could be a tough question, but it might bring a beautiful answer. Which it's a tough question because the person is not aware that there is an answer, and it can bring beautiful surprises. But I have not been able to understand this logic, where people can go to this extent.
I think that your remarks.
Pardon?
Your remarks, they form a invaluable sort of analysis of the concept of tradition, even in its flourishing state. not just within the field of Gurbani Sangeet, but generally how tradition should be understood. Because post-Enlightenment, even in the West, there's been a lot of phobia surrounding traditions, and they've been painted as resting solely upon appeals to authority. And sometimes there's a view that there's just this existing power structure that wants to perpetuate its own domination. This has been the postmodern treatment of traditions, that essentially they're only power relations. There isn't anything of substance that one is trying to perpetuate. But this itself is a view or analysis of traditions that are in a very, very sorry state. There are those that just have to rely on, well, I said it. But in the case of the Gurbani Sangeet Parampara, there's something altogether different. There was the revelatory utterance of Baba Nanak and the other authors of Gurbani. And to make possible tasting what they tasted when the Bani first arrived, that's what the Parampara is about. Creating possible those experiences of transcendence and eminence that are so beautifully tied to one another. And in such cases, you've mentioned in the past that it's about subtracting one's own majburis, one's own compulsions, aesthetically and musicologically, the faults of one's voice, so that one can perceive and then render that which has existed, and one isn't introducing one's own home and limitations into the utterance of the song, but one is allowing the song that always was to be through one's own attendance to it. So in that sense, I think this notion of tradition that you bring, and this idea that one can attain milit with what the Gur Khalsa remembers from the utterance of the gurus themselves, it's a very ennobling idea that in terms of one's contemporary expression makes for music of the highest order, because it follows the parameter, the logic, the system, the aesthetical sensibilities of music and of spiritual expression when it was really at a golden age. And in that sense, not to undergo this is just self-defeating. It's suicidal. And civilizationally, if we don't come to those that really have carried memories of the civilization when it was really at its best, our prospects collectively really are going to be quite dire.
Yeah. It is. I don't know what lies ahead in terms of. I waited. I wrote to them a few weeks back. They've not even responded. That means they've their decision is made. They want to live in a confrontational mode, and they have no idea. I mean, the people they are hiding behind. I mean, the continued stories about the Dholakiyas, the Baksh, and the Mia Kadir Baksh and Fakir Baksh. I mean, that defeat, the victory of Paisantu's Pagdi, settled it. They were made students by the sons of Baba Maiya Singh. Bhavani Das, whatever, if they want to deny a Sikh linkage, in the 19th century, there's a whole thing about denial of any Sikh linkage. There's a lot of Arya Samaj and thing in Punjab where gurus are being derided. There's Dayanand Saraswati telling Guru Nanak didn't even know Sanskrit, and so on and so forth. So, it smacks of so much, suspicion that anything to do with the Gursikh heritage would be somehow be denied and would be insulted and ignored and shoved aside. For them, a family which only played dholak and learned Pakhavaj from Bhavani Das is bigger than a tradition which has played Pakhavaj from the times of Guru Nanak. How stupid can you get? I mean, it is. The duels are settled. It's like one of my friends from the field of theatre, VK, wrote I think, Rabbit King or something, from the Lion King. No, he created a drama for theater for children, Rabbit King. So in the plot is that there's a direct descendant of the rabbit who lost the race to the turtle.
Hmm.
So he wants to go and now have a rematch with the direct descendant of the turtle who won the race. So it's a beautiful theater that he wrote, and I gave the music, to that theater production, in which the Kachua, the turtle, is a wise fellow. So the rabbit comes and challenges, hey, I want to have a rematch. My ancestor was stupid. He slept. I am not going to be sleeping, and I'm not that stupid. So I'm gonna prove the record. I'm gonna make, sort of set the record straight. So Kashwa says, it's okay. You can go and announce that you're faster than me. I don't want to race you. It's okay. You can announce it. He says, no, but I want to defeat you. He says, there's nothing to defeat. I'm not even challenging you. I can certify it. Ask me. I mean, I'm just making the story now. This is something like, I can sign wherever you want. It's okay. You're faster than I am. But then he says, no, I want to challenge. He creates such a ruckus in the jungle that then many people come and say, friends of the turtle, why don't you agree? It's okay, he wants to fight. He's just making such a nuisance. And then the turtle agrees. He says, okay, I will. And then there's a song also, Man Gaye Lo Kachue Raja, Bigul Raise Kavlo Vaja. And I composed it in Malkons because it's nighttime in the plot of Man Gaye Lo Kachue Raja, Man Gaye Lo Kachue Raja, Bigul Raise. It goes on like that. Bigul, and the trumpet of the race is now sounding. And then there is a plot. The race begins. It's a long race. So the birds come. They plot to make the rabbit sleep. So they start. So I had to compose a lullaby in a nighttime raga, very romantic dhun. So the rabbit would fall asleep and the turtle would win the race because they don't want the rabbit to win the race because this guy is such an arrogant idiot. So it reminds me of that. It's almost like a rematch. I mean, the duel between the Mia Fakir Baksh, who invited the younger brother of Baba Bhoop Singh, the third son of Baba Maiya Singh, was invited to be a guest. He says, no, you invite me only if you want me to open my instrument. That's what was told. And then the challenge had to be accepted. And Pai Santu his pagdi was won. The seventh Toda, they did not reach even the parents. Seventh Toda Mia Fakir Baksh could not answer to. And Pai Santu was made publicly in Lahore the disciple of, the younger brother of Baba Bhoop Singh, who died early, and then his learning continued with Ustad Pai Mehtab Singh. And Ustad Ghulam Hasan Shagan, Pai Lal's son, when he came, when I brought him over, for a festival, we were all, me, Madan Pa, we were all curating, helping produce for the Delhi government, Guru Manyo Granth. And so I coordinated, I did all the work was done by me. 11 out of the 14 singers were my invitees. And even when my dad was on the deathbed in 2004, and when he came and he spoke about Pai Santu, and he said, oh yeah, Pai Mehtab Singh, yes, you all remembered. New age, bums, they have no memory. In the old times, they take the names of my great-granduncle and touch their ears. They talk of, this Rababi player, but I represent a line which all of them touch their ears, taking the names of my ancestors. And this is how lowly the discourse has to become. Now I have to prove again, or I have to tell. I don't have to prove, but I have to tell. Why do I have to be made to tell who won the duels? I don't want to tell the stories. Because it will seem as if I'm trying to prove that we are greater. There's nothing about greatness. It was an era where people challenged each other, and duels were forced sometimes. And I represent a line of learning which is the oldest and has all the victories, never lost a duel. This tradition, be it not just my family line, other masters also. Bhai Malang was defeated by Ustad Bhai Baldeep Singh in Hoshiarpur, because his mother had challenged that anybody who comes and who defeats my son, I'll give 101 rupees. Ustad Bhai Baldeep Singh heard it, and people went for that. It's like you put a wanted, you put a challenge, people came. Ustad Bhai Baldeep Singh was invited to Hoshiarpur to sing, and he was to sing for 1 month and say, would you like to have a Pakhavji or somebody to play? Which Pakhavji? He says, book Bhai Malang. For a month, Bhai Malang played with him. And on the penultimate day, he says to the mother who sits, he says, I've heard that you have put 101 rupees for who defeats your son. He says, please bring the money tomorrow in the morning, tomorrow in the diwan, the final diwan, I will defeat your son. It becomes like, spreads like fire. He defeats. Now, Bhai Malang's mother was from a poor family. She did not have money. So the entire Hoshiarpur town collected 101 rupees and gave it to Bhai Baldeep Singh. These are public things. It's not a small thing. This is like history.
Indeed.
This is not something that we're saying, it happened in a bathroom of somebody or a kitchen of somebody or in a drawing room of somebody that nobody knew. I mean, the entire town, small town of Hoshiarpur, they said it is our honor. It is honorable. This defeat is honorable. But it is the daughter-in-law of our town who has pledged to give 101 rupees to who will defeat, and we respect Bhai Malang. He's the pride of our town. But Ustad Bhai Baldeep Singh of Meli, the teacher of the Queen of Kapurthala, has rightfully won the duel, the challenge. He was a challenger and he won, and we will collect the money, and we will pay the bet. And he is the second teacher of my grandfather, right? So these people are trying to somehow prove that Sawa Lakh Shagird of Mian Kader Bakhsh. It's a way of saying, like, I am a Sawa Lakh. That's a Gursikh Bola. Sawa Lakh Shagird, Sawa Lakh for me is one person. Did Mian Kader Bakhsh had nothing else to do but to teach 125,000 people in an age when there was no social media? When did he get time to teach 125,000 people? Maybe there were 124,000. What is this brag? I mean, is that enough to brag? To say that this is, that he was, is that the way to say he was? Gyani Darshan Singh is one of his oldest students. Not one of the oldest student, who was adopted as her own child by Miaji's wife. Because Miaji and the father of Gyani Darshan Singh were close friends. Even when Ustad Allah Rakha came to Chandigarh, I am the one who brought the two Guru Bhais, the eldest and one of the younger Guru, students of Mian Kader Bakhsh is Allah Rakha Sahab. And Gyani Darshan Singh, the oldest. Allah Rakha ji remembered him. And after the first 20 minutes, Gyani Darshan Singh said, now take me away from here. This is now he's playing for others. And Allah Rakhaji from the stage said, I've met my old Guru Bhai and I'm playing the beginning for him. I dedicate this to him. But after that, when he started playing all these 5 and 1, Dhina, then he says, no, I don't want to hear this. That is his elder Bhai. So I had to drive away. I could not even listen again because he says, no, take me away. He got up and said, now he's not playing for me. He's playing for ordinary stuff. I don't want to hear it. There are hierarchies. You cannot just suddenly pretend you are the only existing thing. It doesn't work like that. And Gyani Darshan Singh used to say that when Bhai Arjan Singh Tarangad used to play, Miaji khar khante si. Miaji was jealous of Bhai Arjan Singh Tarangad. He says, "Mere Ustad Miyan Ji ne." He's not Bhai Baldeep Singh Tarangar. My affiliation, my alliances, my loyalty is with Miyan Ji. But my teacher used to be jealous of Bhai Baldeep Singh Tarangar. Ke, Tarangar pe kya bajaunda menu samajh nahi aata. It's such humility that what does Tarangar play? I really don't understand what he's playing. I don't know what he's playing. And then on the other side, I would hear only notes of respect for Miyan Ji. And when Miyan Ji played with Pai Nasira, and Tarangar Sahab told me, कहते उस्ताद शिगिर्द इकट्ठे बजाए, कहते क्या सोना बजाया, किन्ना सोना, कहते चार ताल दी कहते छेड़ा बजाइयां, कहते बड़े सोने लगे ना. मतलब there was such love when they remembered each other. And these new age fellows, no idea about etiquette, about decorum. And they just suddenly try to prove to me now. They're trying to tell me that I'm such a fool to term the. Now they will first they are saying Jodi Pakhavaj and Jodi Mardang. Why are you hyphenating it? And the term Jodi itself, is this the dialogue you want to have? Because I will not be proven wrong. I'm the Parampara Mukhi, I do all day these days. I kill mosquitoes. I dispose of mosquitoes, and it's very, very unfortunate, very disturbing, in fact. Whereas we should be sitting and analyzing old marvels, looking at things. There's so much to do. We are short of hands on the deck. And there is, I had thought that they are going to be wonderful, wonderful contributors to the Gursikh heritage and Gurbani Sangeet, to the cause of Dhrupa, to the cause of Dhamar, to the cause of Chand, Prabandhs, and so on and so forth, to the Rag systems. But it seems their priorities lie elsewhere, and to go to the extent and not even share with me. When I have given them permissions to use my work and my words in my interviews, it is not necessary that they have to be my students, for example. It's not necessary. It is not necessary that they must only sing and play the compositions that I teach. It's not necessary at all. It is important to have multiple colors, to have a dialogue, to have, when knowledge debates itself, when knowledge challenges itself, when knowledge inspires, one stream of knowledge inspires another stream of knowledge. It is very healthy to have multiple voices, colors. I mean, today is the day of Holi. What would be a Holi when it is only one color? It is not flowers, bloom. It's very important. But it is important to have honor in that debate. It is very important to have dignity in that debate. It is important that one is armed with the highest scholarship and insight. You cannot fool your way around. You cannot behave like an idiot, the only, as I say, these days I hear emanating from your political circles, when you have the law on your side, you quote the law. When you quote the facts on your side, when you don't have the facts on your side, you don't quote them. Then you change the topic to something else. Then you
if only I had political circles these days.
Pardon?
If only I had political circles these days. I'm an exiled and disenfranchised citizen.
Conservative. You're a Republican fellow,
What are the Republicans conservatives? Where do you find a conservative these days?
But anyway. But
this is extraordinary, Paisal.
Pardon?
It's extraordinary hearing these narratives, that there was a time when all of the stakeholders within the community were so invested in the preservation and the furtherance of this vidya that we're linked with. When you had mothers, when you had members of the village of Hoshiarpur, when one had the Vidwans within the village, and those from outside that were all interested in promoting musical excellence. And one can see that, of course, there was a certain amount of ego and a certain amount of self-assertion in trying to show one's prowess, trying to show one's theory. But then there also was regard for Vidya when it existed, and those protagonists had confidence in their own practice and in their own learning. But then they also had the humility to concede when they were defeated. And this is the sort of enterprise that an entire village would have found it ennobling to be a part of. It's such a far cry from what we see at present in socio-cultural attendance, because it really takes a village to create a Vidwan. And we're not seeing those sorts of dynamics so much anymore. And finally, it's just really disheartening. It's really shameful to see those of my generational cohort that are prematurely opining and being taken in by narratives, by talking points that they aren't able to see the civilizational ramifications of. And I think making qualitative distinctions and making qualitative judgments on matters of Vidya, this is the sort of thing that 40 years into your learning, you're in a position to do. You're someone that did the field work when those who were able to bear witness to the music that existed pre-partition and that had come down, you had met those elders that really were in a position to say what's what. And at present, you're the one that is the reservoir of these narratives from more than 27 grand elders. So those that would like to talk about history, those that would like to talk about the notion of parampara and what the Jordi is, it's only in interacting with those elders that pass their narratives and Vidya on to you that one is going to have any primary sources with which to say anything of substance, and to see sort of baseless speculations and attacks on that which you're bringing forward, which are emic narratives. It's very sad to see that sort of pseudo-scholarship at play. And I just look forward to the day when, by Guru's grace, we're going to have entire villages that once again will be stakeholders in the preservation of this extraordinary parampara.
And, you know, the Dodar Taksal was disbanded because the duel was not well fought.
Baba.
And again, Ustad Bhai Batan Singh was involved. They tried to defeat Ustad Bhai Batan Singh. And who was trying to defeat him? Professor Darshan Singh Komal. It was the third and the final time he tried to defeat Ustad Bhai Batan Singh. And he conspired with the Vidwans of Dodar Taksal, where Ustad Bhai Batan Singh was invited to sing. They did not feed them proper. There were excessive use of spices, no water, etc., etc. And who was a witness who was with him is Parminder's Nanaji, who was playing, you know, harmonium along with Ustad Bhai Batan Singh, who was playing the taus, which was made by Parminder's Nanaji. And on the final day, on the day of the Diwan, he recognized that everybody was there. He overheard things happening. And there itself, he told his teacher, Ustad Bhai Batan, saying that, Ustad ji, aaj morcha lag gaya lagda hai. He says, I think a duel has been set up without informing you. He says, really? Kaun kaun hai? He named everyone who was sitting in front. This Rababi, that Rababi, that Komal Betha hai. He took names. And they have invited a Rababi tabla player who's been prepped up to not to allow you to sing. He says, Acha. And then Ustad Bhai Batan Singh said that, all right, these are the notes I'm going to touch. He taught Parminder's Nanaji Gyani Harbhajan Singh, Mistri, the notes that he will use. And he said in a very formal, he was a, you know, teacher of kings and queens and princesses and princes, the old protocol. He took the name, he says, I am so and so. And he says, I'm going to sing a raga in a particular tal. If anybody can tell which rag and tal I am singing in, I will accept my defeat. So he started singing, and the gentleman, young prodigy, very, very talented tabla player, could not even play. He had no idea. He tried one tal or another tal, nothing fit. So he fell silent. And then he asked him, "Who have you studied from?" He says, "I'm a student of so and so." He says, "Do you know whom has he studied from?" He says, "He studied from that master and one master called Ustad Batan Singh." He says, "Who am I?" He says, "I don't know, sir, who you are." He says, "I am Batan Singh." Look at the irony. And he said, "You are the student of my student, and you should have come to me last night. I would have told you what to play." Huh? He says, "What do you like to play?" He says, "I play teen tal very well." He says, "All right, so teen tal will now it be. Shall it be now?" And he sang as he played so wonderfully well, and he now had it. But after defeating him, and then after the entire duel was over, he then addressed the villagers, village sarpanch, and the head of the the entire system there, the Taksal, and he said that I've been here for 2 weeks, over 2 weeks now, and this is how we found stones, etc. in the food, excessive spices, dal had only water, etc., etc. There were stones. I mean, he told how they were basically like in a concentration camp, and that we have not been informed that there will be a duel, and it's not even a challenge that we could accept or not accept. And it is just imposed on us to insult me without even telling me. If my student had not found out, I would not have known what is happening. I'm a blind man. So if they had not, I cannot see who all is sitting in front of me. And he says, but this is very, very unfortunate, and I take strong exception to this. And do you know what the village sarpanch got up and did? He says, we are for honorable conduct. Duels have been fought before, but never with malice. We welcome honorable exchange of knowledge, even challenge of knowledge. But deceit and cheating we will not accept, and we do not support the Taksal to do this kind of, to engage in such conduct. From today onwards, at the defeat of and at the victory of Bhai Baldeep Singh, we disband the Daudati Taksal. That is how Daudati Taksal ended. Now, how many people tell the story? Because if they are affiliated to that story, or they are students of Darshan Singh Komal and others, they don't want to tell the story. They don't even want to know the story. They don't want to hear the story. But history is history. If Darshan Singh Komal had a clan, Ustad Bhai Batan Singh also had a clan. Clan of students. They also remember. Nobody invited that somebody challenges Ustad Bhai Batan Singh. Ustad Batan Singh was not telling, hey, come, challenge me so that I'll defeat you and I'll tell a story after. So this is, it was as Ustad Bhai Arjun Singh Tarangad said something very poignantly. He said, "Asi ladke kende asi jit jande ji, par babi kende vidwan pure si." He says, we may win. We used to win. If there was a duel, we win. But it does not mean that they were less than us. They were vidwans. He says, as long as we were all together, there was a bittersweet competition that kept us practicing hard.
Oh.
कहते सी मेहनत करते सी कि एक दूजे तो वधिया हो सकिए. That we became better than the other. And the other person also would respond with even more mehnat. That kept the level of discourse, the level of knowledge very high. He says the moment they left, they were forced to leave in 1947. He says everything crumbled. Nothing remained there. He says nothing remained there. These are very painful chapters. And for me, who's privy, who's studied, I'm the only person who was born witness to these masks. They were living in anonymity. Other people don't even know. Many of my contemporaries, there's gentleman, Surinder from England, who once boasted, he said, Bhai Sahab, I have got 500 students. You've got how many? You've got none. He says, you only got one. I said, okay. So he was pointing towards Parminder. I said, okay, I present my one student. Can you present someone who can debate with him? And what do you teach even? What do you know that you want to teach? It happened in Funhē at the yoga festival. Very big 2-3 hour long duel, which is painful for me. It's not my interest to do that. But if they insult the tradition and the tradition's knowledge and the tradition bearers and the history of Gurbani Sangeet, then there is no mercy. I am merciless. I will not forgive and I will not forget. And I will not allow corruption or stains or the history to be stained unfairly. Prove something that it lacks, and I will accept it. I've always done that. If I'm short of memory, if there are certain things which have not been passed on to me, but I know that because they exist in the Guru Granth Sahib, nobody can say they never existed. I may forget about Suchaji Kuchaji, but it is there in Gurbani. At one time it was sung until maybe few decades back, even my granduncle. I never, this conversation never happened with them. There's so much else to do. But to insult and to engage in dishonorable conduct, I reject that. I don't think people can even get a chance to present their case in the court of wisdom, in the court of knowledge. Such frivolous kind of assumptions, insinuations are not acceptable even in, that is not even any evidence what they are presenting, is my contention.
Discriminating judgments across intrinsic properties is just one of the rarest of human abilities. It's the sort of thing that comes from those that discover excellence, or they've been given the kirpa of excellence. It's something that comes. And then it's those that have the humility and seeing the beauty of this that are inspired to learn it, that then are made privy to the inner workings of this beauty that then is perpetuated on through parampara. But then there are going to be external signs of there being excellence that will come in terms of fame, recognition, status, power, and the rest of it. And it seems that you're going to have the many that really flock to these external significations. They're not looking at the ras that makes this something of wonder in the first place, but they're looking at the maya that such vidya brings to vidvans. And in those sorts of cases, what I've always seen in the narratives you've shared is the core center, these protagonists, they're never the ones that went around trying to insult others. They always found beauty that others were practicing as well, and they always took their excellent renditions to be an impetus to practice more themselves and to try to do even more justice to the vidya that they received. And then it's in the sense that one has a kirpan, that one isn't going around ever initiating force, but that one is defending the dignity and the truth of the history that has been. And the duels that Baba Jwala Singh had to fight because Rababis had insulted him. It's the exact same tamiz, the exact same etiquette, comportment, and decorum that's always truth-oriented. In Greek, it's alethic. It's not a heuristic or victory-oriented mentality. And there's room for healthy competition in any civilization or society. There's room for the agon. But insofar as this contestation isn't always trying to force us to hone in on the intrinsic properties of things, but just becomes a matter of confrontation for the sake of victory, for the sake of showing one's superiority, at that point it's an overweening and very illusory thing, because that sort of power is Maya. It comes at one moment and it can be taken away the next moment. But it's really Halimi, it's dignity, it's bearing witness to the truth, to the history that has been, that really dignifies all those that are involved. And even in defeat, there can be virtue, there can be humility, there can be an ennobling sense of accepting that one made a challenge that one wasn't able to back up with substance. And in that defeat, one can still be an instructive lesson of humility that one's students and members of one's clan can really take succor in.
Yeah. Well, that's how life is. I don't know. Life is like that. There are times, there are stories which are beautiful, stories that are spicy, stories that are bitter, stories that are bittersweet, stories that are, edible. Then there are others which are not so edible. That's how life is. So, खेल हैगा परमेश्वर दी लीला हैगी है. जित चित लाया तित तित लगना. I think people are engaged where they are programmed in a way or wired to engage in. I sometimes feel the lack of, hands where one can analyze and look at. It's not that there's any dearth. I mean, I think I'm very glad at the quality of studentship that I have been blessed with, the kind of students that I have, the fine minds that there are, students who are aware, who are not fooled by the lies that have been spoken by many people emanating from, be it from Punjabi University, Patiala in the last 20, 25 years, or other quarters. I'm so glad. I mean, just a few days ago, there was an 11-year-old child who's been researching on his own from California. I think you were there in the class that day.
Indeed.
Where, I mean, I quizzed him, I challenged him. I said, why do you want to study from me? And this young fellow, carried himself so beautifully. He says, I have researched, you're the best. I mean, whatever he wanted to say. But I quizzed him of who else have you, I mean, what do you think, why you want to study with him? He had a reason. And he is in fact educating his own father and mother about why, what is Bhai Baldeep, because Bhai Baldeep Singh is not about Bhai Baldeep Singh, he's about the parampara. He's a brother. I mean, look at that. I mean, that somehow, if that is the quality of studentship, students of the parampara that I am blessed to mentor, people who are not suckers for lies, who are not fooled into believing fiction as if it was Gursikh history. I feel blessed. I feel that not alone anymore.
I'm just reminded of two lines from the conference proceedings. You had recently given a keynote, and just from the text of that, I think two lines are of particular salience. Gurmat Sangeet is a modern system of singing Gurbani that deceptively presents contemporaneous amalgamation of derivative musical systems as A, the Kirtan endowed by the Gurus, and B, as normatively binding. It is a neo-colonial displacement of the historical Kirtan of the Gurus by imitative musical concoctions preached and marketed with a disingenuous rhetoric of authenticity and orthopraxy. So I think one can't really reiterate enough that this isn't a matter of opinion, of aesthetic taste, of which style one likes more. The Gurus sang, and the Gur Khalsa remembered their singing, and through a very painstaking pedagogical process, passed down the Shabadrits including original marvels of the Sikh gurus and the Sufi pirs and the bhagats that are remembered to this day and have been passed on not just by members of your family, but by the taksals of the guru's endowment. And in this manner, you're the one that really did the field work at a critical period in the 80s and 90s, such that those that were really neglected, they were able to pass on to you their stories and the vidya that has existed within the Gur Khalsa. But if you look at the socio-political upheavals that the Sikh Qaum has experienced, it's really a miracle that as much as survived has survived. And when you have a state, when you have an apparatus of knowledge production systems, then you're in a position to tell your own histories, to print your own textbooks, to glorify and create your own award systems. But if you look at the history of the Gur Sikhs and recognize that this is a persecuted community, that these ideas that really took South Asia by storm from the period of Guru Nanak onwards, that these had always been of great concern to the imperial powers, whether it was the Mughal Darbar or later on whether it was the British Raj, and now whether it's the Indian nation state. If you have these centralizing political powers that are interested in very tiny narratives, this sovereign Gursikh voice that isn't going to allow its own histories to be insulted and isn't going to allow other communities to be subalternized, this sort of fearless presence is going to always be a thorn in the side of tyrants. So in that sense, that there is the Gurbani Sangeet Parampara with its sovereign emic voice, I think is something that is so precious and something so instructive. And rather than viewing this as something that's one among many, this has to be viewed as something singular that allows us to recontextualize the historiography of all that has been, and in turn give us an opportunity to reimagine what might still be.
But anyway, many people were saying that do not even respond. It's like giving unnecessary importance to them. But then the key is that it's not about them. It's about there are things that happened in the 90s. For example, to do with the rag forms. What happened at Javandi Kala? New rag forms were created. In fact, I was able to prevent Rag Ramkali Anand from becoming official as part of the Javandi Taksals or Rag Vidayak committee's thing. In fact, Gurnam and I had the first duel that we had, and I won that debate. Baba Sucha Singh was the decide. Gurnam asked Baba Sucha Singh, Baba ji, tusi faisla karo. So, such was the anger that he even stuttered the question out. And I said, "Aao, Babu, tusi faisla karo." But there was silence, and everybody's a witness, like Singh Bandhus, Dr. Jagir Singh, Professor Kartar Singh, Professor Rajinder Singh of Lucknow, Jaswant Singh Paura Sahab, Bhai Baldeep Singh, name them. They were all there. Bhai Dilbagh Singh, Gulbagh Singh. Everybody was in the room. And I was proxying for my granduncles, Bhai Avtar Gurcharan and Baba Sucha Singh, after quite a bit of silence, maybe at least 2-3 minutes of silence, with him with his head low. He says, Jo Baldeep keh raha hai, sahi keh raha hai. That my contention. He says, what Baldeep is saying is correct. He had to put his foot down, and Baba Sucha Singh then rightfully decided and gave the verdict that Anand is the title of the Bani, as I contended, that it is not Rag Ramkali Anand, is not Ramkali like Basant Hindol, or Gaudi Maj. Rag Ramkali Melatija Anand is Ramkali is the Rag, Anand is the title of the Bani. Now it is not Anandi, where the argument which Gurnam made was that, Anandi is a Rag, because it was Professor Tara Singh's work. And it is good to be creative and you can create. That's all right. That's part of contemporary music. But you cannot say now everybody must sing now Rag Ramkali Anand as Ramkali plus Anandi Raga forms together. And that was, but I was not present in all the meetings. So the problems that happened at that time, one, that social media was not there. Things were published, and later on, in retrospect, you were responding to rag forms afterwards. Then there were histories were being concocted to do with Saranda. I mean, everybody knew. The Parampara knows Saranda as the inspiration of Guru Amar Das. Somebody somewhere created a fiction because Guru Arjan Dev played the Saranda. Somehow somebody said, one of these Johnnies, said that, oh, Guru Arjan Dev created the Saranda. Where is Guru Amar Das? So now that has become half fact. It's like almost like Trump, idea that they think Biden actually cheated his way when the guy who was trying to cheat is being celebrated as some avatar of white supremacy. It's like that. There are always people who get taken by lies, which are carved out like that. So it is proven. I don't have to prove that. Proof is in the pudding. There are nearly half, more than 60-70% of the Republicans, voters think that Biden actually cheated his way to the presidency. So here, many people are now believing that Guru Arjan Dev actually created the Saranda. So all those who say that Guru Amar Das is the one, they say they're all wrong. So that's what they think. And then another fiction was written that, Guru Gobind Singh created the Taus, where it is understood by the Parampara for a long time that it's Guru Hargobind who is inspiring the Taus and not Guru Gobind Singh. It was written by some of these guys, and they are now propagating that whole idea that even Dilruba was created by Guru Gobind Singh. But in that age, only when this was like published and spread, so that which was spread is by the time it reaches me. Even this Jasdeep's article, I didn't even know until one of my students, not you, but I don't know whoever, it doesn't really matter. One of my other students is the one who pointed towards the article of Jasdeep. And then I read, even in the age of social media, Jasdeep didn't have even the honor of sending me the article, Bhai Saab, I'm about to publish this and I have written this is an important major research article, whatever. Can you kindly have a look? My keynote address, you have the copy of it because after I wrote it, I sent it to you. Why don't you have a look? And also to Niranjan sometimes, I did to Francesca or I asked Maurizia to have a look at it, I sent it to, for example, friends around within the field of music and theatre. So one does it. He never sent it to me. So that means that must have been, he knew that I will not accept many of his, his transgressions, if I may, or trespassings even. That was very disturbing for me. And I thought it was because it's public. I mean, it's not private. It's a public article, public statements need to be responded to. Otherwise, they become history. They become unchallenged if you don't call a spade a spade. We are in a way sort of, our silence might get misconstrued, or my silence has the risk of being misconstrued as if I'm endorsing or I'm accepting it, accepting a lie as if it were a fiction. Last thoughts before we call it a day?
Indeed, there's a Latin adage, tacet consentire videtur, that silence can imply implicit consent. And as a matter of Roman law, it was often understood as such. So when one has people that are in a responsibility of authority, and I wish I could say people at present, but I mean, a rather singular factor, when one has individuals that create the contemporary field of Gurbani Sangeet on the old parameters and now make it a matter of not the emic scholarship and analysis, which has always taken place, but a matter of scholarship within the Western university system coming out of the 19th century German universities, when one has Gurmat Sangeet in that sense, that your seminal papers are really the founding of on academically substantive grounds, in that sense, one really can't remain silent, no matter how frivolous the allegations that are put forward are. We are in Kali Yuga, and if it is so difficult for individuals to adjudicate between intrinsic properties, then it just becomes he said, she said, and you just have these two statements, these two propositions. So it really requires this sort of conversation in public fora to help people see through the argumentation and why it is one might believe of you. It's not enough that a person claims a thing. One has to ask epistemological questions and ask on what basis, on what empirical and on what principled justification a person is saying what they're saying. And I think I was 14 when I first encountered you. It was Bhai Baldeep Singh. I had met him in Delhi, and he said, if you really are interested in studying Jodhpur College, the one person you have to go to is Gogi. And I didn't know who this Gogi was. And then when I asked, he said, Bhai Baldeep Singh, my nephew, he's the one that you have to study with. And then from 2009 onwards, the sort of arguments that you made, they had a clarity that was very evident to me at the time. That very same summer, I had spent time with Surinder Singh of the United Kingdom and with Gurnam Singh of Patiala, and I saw how they were teaching for extended periods of time. I had known them for several years previously, but it was in encountering the arguments that you had made in 2009 that I actually saw that there was something that existed, that was remembered, that was passed down, and we can taste of the same rasas here and now. So, by way of summary, I suppose this is all part of the Holi, all part of the colors of the Kalpurak that exist. One has to have all of the flavors, one has to have all of the colors, so there are some discordant notes, but nonetheless, I'm so grateful for what you have brought to the table over decades. You actually created the table upon which this conversation is currently taking place, and as a matter of history, this is going to be something that scholars, when passed in school, perhaps in a decade or so, maybe in 2 decades, they're going to be in a position to assess, honestly, who was doing what in the 90s and how this Renaissance and Gursic affairs came to be.
Yeah, of course. This for the future generations, for your and the generation after, to make that analysis. Thank you very much, Nihal. It was lovely that you could join in. It was me and Ishwardeep having a wild idea. But I was actually scolding him. I said, you're asking me a question now on what everybody else will, somehow not as part of the rules of the class. If you have a question, you ask when everybody else is around. And otherwise, I don't have to, answer the same question multiple times. So it's just basically trying to avoid that, oh, you had a conversation, tell us about it too. I'm too bored now to tell of that conversation. In avoiding that repeat, answering, we decided to go live for fun. And I just asked you, are you around? We're doing this. I'm glad that you had time and that you were available between your meetings.
Thank you so much, Bhai Sabji.
And we'll talk soon.
Absolutely. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
Everyone, thank you so much for joining in, and we'll talk soon. I think we have a wonderful Baitak tomorrow. As I mentioned, we have Professor Ranjit Singh in conversation with me tomorrow evening. It'll be India time tomorrow evening. Well, it's today evening in about 15, 16 hours. I'll be in conversation with Professor Ranjit Singh. It'll be 8 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. So do kindly take time out and join me tomorrow. And I hope to see you then. Sat Kathar. Hafiz. Namaskar. Very good evening to you all, or wherever you are, and very good morning to those in South Asia. It's already 3:17 a.m. This is Bhai Baldeep Singh. So, until we meet again.